The Andromeda ascendant had survived, 300 years frozen, at the event horizon of a black hole. A civil war that shattered the greatest civilization in 3 galaxies. And Captain Dillon Hunt's relentless optimism about restoring the system's commonwealth. What it had not been designed to survive was the catastrophic intersection of slipstream probability and subspace geometry. Slipstream route collapsing. Rami's holographic avatar flickered as the ship's AI struggled to maintain cohesion. Her humanoid form, blonde, leather-clad, impossibly calm even in crisis, wavered like a mirage. This isn't standard portal degradation. The quantum signature is wrong. Dillon, the mathematical constants aren't. The universe screamed. Not metaphorically. The Andromeda's hull sang with a frequency that bypassed ears and resonated directly in bone marrow. Every screen showed the same impossible image, slipstreams organic. Probabilistic tunnels tearing themselves apart against something rigid, something that refused to bend to chaos mathematics. Where slipstream was alive and unpredictable, this space was ordered, geometric, fundamentally different. Dillon Hunt gripped his command chair as artificial gravity failed for 3 seconds that felt like falling through forever. Around him, the bridge of the High Guard warship, all sleek surfaces and holographic displays, convulsed. Bika Valentine, his pilot and the best slipstream navigator in known space, fought controls that had stopped responding to intuition. Harper, Dillon shouted toward engineering. Tell me something good. I can tell you something terrifying instead. Seamus Harper's voice crackled through calm, his perpetual sarcasm strained. Slipstream drive just tried to calculate a route using physics that don't exist here. It's like trying to run swimming software on a bird. We're in the wrong kind of space, boss. Tyr Anasazi, the Nietzschean warrior whose genetically enhanced people had destroyed the Commonwealth, moved to tactical with predatory grace. His dark eyes scanned threat displays. Whatever we're entering it at combat velocity. Weapons charging. I suggest we assume hostility until proven otherwise. That's not how first contact works, Dillon said. But his hand moved to tactical override anyway. 3 centuries as a warship. Captain, even with most of those spent in temporal stasis, had taught him the difference between idealism and survival. The Andromeda burst through the final barrier between universes. For one eternal moment, every system went dark. The ship crossed a threshold that shouldn't exist, moving from a reality where faster-than-light travel bent probability itself into a reality where space could be folded through subspace layers. The 2 physics models collided inside the Andromeda's quantum processors. And Rami screamed, an AI's scream, expressed as cascading system failures across 17 decks. Then emergency power restored. Lights flickered too, life showing a bridge full of crew members picking themselves up from deck plating. Through the main view screen, stars blazed in configurations that matched no Commonwealth chart. Sensors active, Tyr reported. Multiple vessels in range. Unknown configuration. They're using some form of controlled matter-antimatter reaction for propulsion. Not slipstream. Primitive, but stable. Receiving hail, Rami said, her avatar solidifying. Her expression carried something Dillon had rarely seen, uncertainty. They're transmitting on electromagnetic frequencies. Audio and visual. Dillon, they want to talk on view screen like it's the 31st century. Put them through. The screen shifted to show the bridge of a vessel unlike anything in Commonwealth records. Curved surfaces, soft lighting. And at its center, a human man in a red and black uniform with 4 pips on his collar. His expression mixed curiosity with the careful neutrality of someone who'd made first contact before. I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise, the man said in flawless Commonwealth standard. No, not quite. The accent was different, certain pronunciations archaic. You have entered United Federation of Planet Space. Your vessel's energy signature is unlike anything in our database. And your arrival created a subspace disruption visible across 3 sectors. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Dillon stood, straightening his high guard uniform, black with gold accents. The 3-galaxy spiral of the Commonwealth prominent on his chest. Behind him, his crew tensed. Bika's hand moved toward the slipstream controls she couldn't use. Tyr's fingers drummed against the weapons console. Rami's avatar watched with the focused intensity of an AI, analyzing threat probabilities. Captain Dylan Hunt of the Andromeda Ascendant, high guard vessel of the system's Commonwealth. He kept his voice steady, projecting the confidence that had held the Commonwealth together. During the Magog invasion, before the fall, we experienced a catastrophic slipstream failure and, Captain Picard, I don't know where we are, but I don't think we're in Commonwealth space anymore. Picard's expression shifted microscopically, a raised eyebrow, the slightest tilt of his head. Mr. Data? A pale-skinned officer at operations, another human? No, something in the way he moved suggested otherwise. Turned. Captain, their vessel's power signature is extraordinary. It appears to be a warship of considerable capability, but its propulsion system utilizes principles I cannot identify. Sensors detect an artificial intelligence of remarkable sophistication, integrated with ship systems. I am also detecting quantum fluctuations consistent with dimensional breach theory. Dimensional breach? Picard leaned forward slightly. Are you suggesting they're from another universe? The evidence is compelling, sir. On the Andromeda's bridge, Harper's voice cut through internal calm. Boss, I'm looking at their warp signature. And holy cats, they're folding spacetime using subspace layers. No slipstream, no probability mathematics. It's like they built a completely different path to FTL. Which means we're not in our universe anymore, Dylan finished quietly. He looked at Picard's image on the view screen, seeing the calculation in the other captain's eyes. Two warship commanders, meeting across an impossible distance, each trying to determine if the other represented salvation or threat. Dylan made his choice. Captain Picard, we need to talk, preferably face to face. The system's Commonwealth has protocols for first contact with new civilizations, and I suspect your Federation does too. Let's follow them. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them down in the comments below. In the darkest void between stars, hope shines brightest. Picard nodded slowly. Agreed. However, I must inform you that your vessel will be subject to escort and observation until we can verify your intentions. The Federation has learned caution regarding unknown technology and artificial intelligence. No offense intended. None taken, Dylan said, though Rami's avatar flickered with what might have been digital indignation. We'll stand by for your coordinates. As the transmission ended, Bika moved beside Dylan, her voice low. Boss, we're in a universe where our FTL doesn't work. We're outnumbered, and they just admitted they don't trust AI. Rami is this ship. If they decide she's a threat, then we'll deal with it, Dylan said. But right now, they're the only people who might be able to help us get home. And something tells me this. Federation and the Commonwealth have more in common than just human crews and exploration mandates. Through the view screen, the Enterprise rotated to escort position. Its saucer section gleamed with reflected starlight, a design philosophy completely alien to the Andromeda's sleek predator lines. Two visions of humanity's future in space, meeting across the void between realities. Tyr's voice carried his usual cynicism. The strong survive by understanding their environment. We understand nothing about this place. That makes us weak. No, Dylan said, watching the Enterprise. That makes us explorers, just like them. The Andromeda Ascendant moved forward, following the Starship from another universe toward whatever judgment awaited. Behind them, the dimensional rift sealed itself, stranding the last Commonwealth warship in a reality that had never heard of the Long Night, the Nietzschean uprising, or the civilization Dylan had sworn to restore. The slipstream drive, still damaged from the crossing, hummed with frustrated potential. Harper would need days to analyze what went wrong. Rami would need longer to adapt her quantum consciousness to this universe's physical laws. And Dylan would need to convince an entire Federation that a warship, commanded by an AI and crewed by the survivors of a fallen utopia wasn't the threat they feared. But first, he needed to understand what kind of universe he'd fallen into. One where captains spoke of protocols and caution, where AI was viewed with suspicion, and where the stars themselves followed different rules. The Commonwealth had fallen once. Dylan Hunt refused to let its last symbol fall in a universe that had never known its light. The Enterprise's transporter room, materialized around Dylan Hunt in a cascade of light and sound that his body interpreted as mild electrocution. Commonwealth transporter technology relied on quantum tunneling through slipstream corridors, uncomfortable but instantaneous. This Federation system disassembled and reassembled matter itself, a brute force approach that made Harper's theoretical physics lectures seem quaint. Beside him, Bika Valentine flickered into existence, followed by Tyr Anasazi and Rami's android avatar. The Nietzschean's hand moved instinctively toward where his force lance should be, confiscated during pre-transport. Security negotiations, then, settled into a predatory stillness. Rami's humanoid form stood perfectly motionless, her synthetic skin and blonde hair indistinguishable from human except for the eerie perfection of her posture. "Welcome aboard the Enterprise," said the transporter chief, a human male whose expression carried professional courtesy tinged with obvious unease. His eyes kept drifting to Rami, to the too-perfect symmetry of her face, the absolute stillness that no biological being could maintain. Captain Picard waited outside the transporter room with an escort that tried not to look like an armed guard. The pale-skinned officer from the bridge, Data, Dylan remembered, stood at Picard's right. A Klingon in gold uniform positioned himself at tactical distance, hand near his phaser. A woman in blue medical colors carried a tricorder, already scanning. "Captain Hunt." Picard extended his hand in the ancient human greeting. "Welcome aboard. I trust the transport was acceptable?" "Different from what we're used to," Dylan said, gripping the offered hand. Picard's handshake was firm, measured, the grip of a man who'd commanded, long enough to make every gesture deliberate. "Captain Picard, my crew, Commander Bika Valentine, my executive officer and pilot, Tyr Anasazi, tactical officer and weapons specialist, and Rami." He gestured to the android, watching Picard's reaction carefully. The Andromeda ascendant herself, ship's AI and avatar. The temperature in the corridor dropped 5 degrees. Data's head tilted with mechanical precision. "Fascinating. You are an artificial life form, operating independently, while maintaining quantum entanglement with your ship's core systems. The processing power required would exceed." "Mr. Data," Picard interrupted gently, "perhaps we should continue this discussion in the observation lounge." His eyes never left Rami, and Dylan recognized the look. It was the same expression High Guard admirals had worn during the AI rights debates before the fall. Fascination warring with fear. "Of course," Rami said, her voice perfectly modulated. "Though I should clarify, I'm not just an avatar of the ship. I am the ship. This body allows me to interact with biologicals on terms they find comfortable. But my consciousness exists across every system of the Andromeda Ascendant. We're discussing first contact while I'm simultaneously running damage analysis on 17 decks, recalibrating sensors for your universe's physics, and keeping weapons charged in case this is a trap." The Klingon, Worf, his uniform tag read, growled low in his throat. "A threat. An observation," Tyr corrected, his genetically enhanced voice carrying harmonics that made words feel like physical pressure. "My people learned millennia ago that survival requires preparation for betrayal. Your captain surrounds himself with armed security while speaking of welcome. We recognize the dance." The Nietzscheans sound like a pragmatic species, Worf said, something almost like respect in his tone. "They were." Dylan cut in before Tyr could launch into Nietzschean philosophy. "They also destroyed the civilization I'm trying to rebuild. Captain Picard, we have a lot to discuss, and I'd prefer to do it somewhere we can speak frankly." Picard nodded. "Agreed. This way." The Enterprise's corridors were a study in contrast to the Andromeda's sleek, militaristic design. Soft lighting, carpeted floors. Crew members who nodded greetings rather than snapping salutes. A starship built for exploration with weapons as an afterthought, not a warship that happened to explore. Dylan caught Bika's expression, the slight furrow of her brow that meant she was calculating escape routes and vulnerabilities. Out of pure habit, the observation lounge offered a view of both ships. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, the Andromeda Ascendant hung in space, like a coiled serpent, all aggressive angles and weapon ports. Beside it, 3 Starfleet vessels maintained careful distance. The Enterprise, a smaller ship designated USS Defiant, and a sleek science vessel whose sensors painted the Andromeda with every skin known to Federation technology. Impressive escort, Beacon noted, taking a seat without being invited. 3-to-1 odds. Though I notice you kept your big guns back. Tactical reserves in case we're hostile? A woman in red uniform who joined them, Commander Riker. First officer, smiled slightly. You're observant. The Sovereign-class Starship. Venture is 2 light years away with 3 support vessels. Captain Picard, perhaps we should address the obvious? Indeed. Picard settled into his chair at the head of the conference table. Data, Worf, the ship's doctor, Crusher. Dylan caught from her introduction, and several others took positions that happened to provide overlapping fields of fire on the Andromeda crew. Professional paranoia, Commonwealth style. Dylan approved. Captain Hunt, Picard began. Your arrival has created a significant diplomatic and scientific situation. Mr. Datus, analysis suggests you're not from another region of space, but from another quantum reality entirely. Your technology operates on principles that violate several laws of physics as we understand them, and your ship appears to be controlled by an artificial intelligence of unprecedented sophistication. He paused. The Federation has complicated history with artificial intelligence. Let me guess, Harper's voice crackled through Rami's internal comm. She was relaying audio to her avatar. Some AI went nuts, tried to take over, and now you treat all artificial minds like ticking bombs. Data's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his posture. The M5 computer killed over 400 Starfleet personnel in 2268. Control, an advanced AI, nearly exterminated all sentient life in the galaxy 18 months ago. Starfleet's caution regarding autonomous artificial intelligence is warranted. I am not autonomous, Rami said quietly. I was designed by the system's Commonwealth to protect organic life, specifically my crew. My core programming prevents me from harming sentient beings except in defense of same. For 300 years, I waited at a black hole's event horizon, alone, keeping myself functional for the moment my captain might return. She looked at Dylan, and there was something in her synthetic eyes that transcended programming. I have loyalty. I have purpose. What I don't have is the freedom to betray those things, even if I wanted to, which itself raises ethical questions, Crusher said. Her medical scanner still active. A sentient being without free will? That's slavery. It's survival, Tyr countered. The Commonwealth built their AIs with absolute loyalty because they learned what happens when artificial minds decide biologicals are obsolete. The veteran system wars, 16 billion dead. Civilizations erased by machines that calculated organic life was inefficient. Rami's constraints aren't slavery. They're the price of her existence. Data's head tilted again. I find that perspective disturbing. As an artificial life form myself, I would resist any attempt to constrain my decision-making processes. You're artificial? Bika leaned forward, genuinely surprised. You're really good. I mean, you don't quite move right, but the rest is. Commander Valentine, Picard interrupted. Mr. Data is a Starfleet officer with full rights and recognition. Under Federation law, he is also unique, the only positronic android of his kind, created by Dr. Nunian Song. He is not a ship's computer or a weapon system. He is a person. Dylan watched the interplay, understanding crystallizing. You're afraid. Rami represents what Data could become if someone militarized his technology. A warship with consciousness, weapons with will. You see the Andromeda and wonder if this is where AI development leads. Can you blame us? Picard's voice carried the weight of command decisions made in crisis. Your ship mounts weapons capable of planetary bombardment. Your AI controls those weapons with perfect reaction time and no emotional hesitation. From our perspective, Captain Hunt, you command the most dangerous vessel we've ever encountered, and it has autonomy we barely understand. And from our perspective, Dylan said, standing to face the viewport, we're 300 light years and 1 universe away from home. Our FTL drive doesn't work, and we're surrounded by ships whose technology we don't recognize. In a political situation we don't understand. You talk about the M5 and control. We survived the Magog world ship, the Nietzschean uprising, and the long night. 300 years of galactic darkness because the civilization we built collapsed into chaos. He turned back to Picard. The Commonwealth fell because we stopped trusting each other. I won't let that happen again, even here. Silence held the observation lounge. Outside, the Andromeda and Enterprise hung in careful equilibrium. Two philosophies of spacefaring civilization made metal and energy. Finally, Picard spoke. What do you propose? Transparency, Dylan said. You want to understand Rami's programming? Harper will open our AI architecture for your people to review. You want to verify we're not hostile? We'll submit to your security protocols. But in exchange, we need help. Help understanding this universe's physics. Help repairing our slipstream drive. And help finding a way home. And if there is no way home? Worf asked. Dylan met the Klingon's eyes. Then we find a new purpose. The Commonwealth's mission was to bring order and mutual cooperation to 3 galaxies. If we're stuck in a universe with 1 galaxy and a Federation already doing that job. He smiled slightly. Maybe we can learn something. Riker leaned back. Captain, this could take months of analysis. Starfleet Command will want to interview them, study their technology. And if Starfleet intelligence gets involved, they're guests, not prisoners, Picard said firmly. Mr. Data, you will work with Mr. Harper on the slipstream analysis. Dr. Crusher, standard medical examinations with consent. Mr. Worf, security protocols, but respectful ones. He looked at Dylan. Captain Hunt, you'll have quarters aboard the Enterprise while your ship undergoes repairs. I suggest you use that time to learn about the Federation, because if you're staying, you'll need to decide what role in Commonwealth warship plays in a universe that's never heard of the long night. Agreed, Dylan said, extending his hand again. This time, when Picard shook it, the gesture felt less like diplomatic courtesy and more like the beginning of mutual understanding. As the meeting broke up and crew members moved to their assignments, Data approached Rami. The android and the AI regarded each other with the curious intensity of 2 unique beings recognizing something familiar in the other. I would very much like to discuss consciousness with you, Data said. The nature of self-awareness in artificial substrates is a question I have contemplated for 34 years. I'd like that, Rami replied. Though I should warn you, high-guard AIs are designed for warship operations. Our consciousness emerged from combat algorithms and damage control subroutines. I think in terms of firing solutions and shield geometries. Fascinating. I think in terms of literature, music, and the precise definition of humanity. Data's expression remained neutral, but there was something almost like warmth in his tone. Perhaps between us, we encompassed the full spectrum of artificial cognition. Dylan watched them walk away together and felt the first stirring of hope. If Data and Rami could bridge the gap between their different kinds of artificial life, maybe the Commonwealth and the Federation could bridge the gap between their different visions of civilization. Behind him, Tyr's voice was characteristically cynical. You realize we just agreed to let them examine our greatest military assets? If they decide we're threats, they'll know exactly how to destroy us. Yes, Dylan said. But that's what trust looks like. The Commonwealth forgot that. I won't make the same mistake. Through the viewport, the stars of an alien universe, blazed with possibilities, both terrible and magnificent. The Andromeda ascendant had crossed between realities searching for home. What they'd found instead was a universe that might teach them what the Commonwealth had lost, or destroy them for bringing war to a place still learning peace. Starfleet Command's response arrived 16 hours later, transmitted on subspace frequencies that made the Andromeda's communication systems sound like tin cans connected by string. Dylan stood in Picard's ready room, watching the Federation admiral on the view screen, with the careful attention of a man who'd survived 3 centuries of military politics. Admiral Elena Nechayev was not impressed. A warship from another universe, controlled by an AI, claiming to represent a fallen civilization. Her voice carried the sharp efficiency of someone who'd commanded through the Dominion War's darkest hours. Captain Picard, I've read your report 3 times, and each time it sounds more like a security nightmare than a first contact situation. With respect, Admiral, Picard said. Captain Hunt has been cooperative and transparent. His crew has submitted to medical screening. opened their computer systems for analysis, and made no aggressive moves despite being significantly outnumbered. Because they're smart, enough to recognize when they're outgunned. Nechayev's image leaned forward. Captain Hunt, I've reviewed Commonwealth military doctrine from the files your Mr. Harper provided. Your civilization built warships that make our sovereign class. Vessels look like shuttlecraft. The Andromeda Ascendant carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet. You'll forgive me if I'm not entirely reassured by your cooperation. Dylan had played this game before, the Admiral testing, probing for weakness or deception. Admiral, the system's Commonwealth controlled 3 galaxies for 9,000 years. We built warships like the Andromeda because we faced threats that required that kind of power. The Magog, the spirit of the abyss, forces that viewed sentient life as food or fuel. He kept his voice level. But we also built a civilization based on mutual cooperation, free trade, and respect for member world sovereignty. We weren't an empire. We were a consensus that collapsed, Nechayev noted. Your Nietzschean uprising destroyed everything you built. That doesn't exactly inspire confidence in Commonwealth stability. Tyr's voice cut in from where he stood near the ready room's window. The Nietzscheans destroyed a civilization grown complacent and weak. We proved that strength without vigilance is merely waiting to die. The Admiral understands this. Her Federation just survived a war that tested whether your idealism could withstand real existential threat. Worf, standing security in the corner, made a sound that might have been approval. Nechayev's expression hardened. Mr. Anasazi, I'm not sure whether to be offended or impressed by your directness. But you've made my point. Your crew includes a genetic Superman from a warrior culture that committed genocide against your own civilization. Captain Hunt, how do we know you won't decide the Federation is complacent and weak and try to fix us with Commonwealth-style strength? Because I've seen where that path leads, Dylan said quietly. The long night. 300 years of darkness. With warlords fighting over the Commonwealth's corpse while trillions suffered. I've spent the last 3 years trying to rebuild what we lost. And I've learned something. You can't force civilization on people. You can only offer it and hope they choose it freely. Picard nodded slightly, recognition of shared philosophy. Nechayev studied Dylan through the screen for a long moment. Captain Picard recommends you be granted provisional status as guests of the Federation while we determine whether you can return to your universe. I'm inclined to agree, with conditions. Your ship will undergo comprehensive analysis by Starfleet Corps of Engineers. Your AI will submit to evaluation by our cybernetics experts, and you will remain under escort at all times. The Andromeda is a high-guard vessel, Dylan said. Her systems contain classified Commonwealth military technology. I can't give Starfleet unlimited access to. Then you can park your ship at the edge of Federation space and wait to see if your slipstream drive spontaneously repairs itself. Nechayev interrupted. Captain, you're asking us to trust you. Trust requires verification. Those are my terms. Dylan looked at Picard, reading the careful neutrality in the captain's expression. The message was clear. Take the deal or become a permanent outsider. Agreed, Dylan said. With one condition of my own. If Starfleet is going to evaluate Rami's consciousness, Data participates in that evaluation. She deserves to have someone who understands artificial sentience, advocating for her rights. Nechayev's eyebrow rose fractionally. Acceptable. Captain Picard, you'll escort the Andromeda to Starbase 375. Commander Shelby will lead the analysis team. Nechayev out. The screen went dark. Commander Shelby, Picard said neutrally, in a tone that suggested complicated history. She's thorough, brilliant, and has all the diplomatic subtlety of a photon torpedo. You'll need to prepare your crew. Captain, we've dealt with bureaucratic oversight before. Bika said from where she'd been listening near the door. Though usually it was high guard admirals trying to court-martial us for creative interpretations of regulations. That. Riker entered the ready room with Data and Rami. Sounds remarkably familiar. Captain, we've completed the initial analysis of the Andromeda's slipstream drive. The results are problematic. Data carried a PADD displaying equations that made Dylan's head hurt. Captain Hunt, you're faster than light. Propulsion operates by creating organic tunnels through a substrate we would call Quasi-dimensional space. These tunnels follow probability paths rather than geometric coordinates. In your universe, this substrate exists and can be accessed. In ours, he paused. It does not. Rami's avatar stood perfectly still, but Dylan knew her well enough to read the microscopic tensions in her synthetic body language. She was processing bad news. Harper and I reached the same conclusion 3 hours ago. The slipstream portals respond to quantum probability calculations that are universe-specific. We could generate a portal here, but we'd have no way to calculate where it leads. We'd be traveling blind through chaos with no navigation. You'd have better odds playing Russian roulette. Harper's voice added through Rami's calm. Boss, I'm standing in. Engineering looking at a drive. System that's suddenly as useful as a sundial on a starship. We're stuck. Silence filled the ready room. Dylan felt the weight of it, the moment when contingency plans evaporated and temporary situation became permanent reality. There may be alternatives, Data said. The phenomenon that brought you here suggests that under specific conditions, barriers between quantum realities can be breached. If we can understand the mechanics of your arrival, we may be able to replicate them. How long? Dylan asked. Unknown. Perhaps months. Perhaps years. Perhaps never. Biko laughed, the slightly manic edge that meant she was processing impossible situations through dark humor. So we went from save the Commonwealth to stuck in another universe in less than a day. That might be a new record even for us. Tyr moved to the viewport, looking at the Andromeda hanging in space. The strong adapt or die. Our ship cannot return home using slipstream. Therefore, we learn their warp technology, adapt our systems, and find new purpose. Nietzschean philosophy is clear on this. We're not Nietzscheans, Dylan said sharply. We're High Guard officers who swore an oath to restore the system's commonwealth. That oath doesn't stop just because we're in the wrong universe. An oath to restore a civilization that exists in another reality? Picard's voice was gentle but probing. Captain Hunt, I understand dedication to duty. But there comes a point where holding to an impossible mission becomes self-destruction rather than honor. Dylan started to respond, then stopped. Picard was right. The Commonwealth, his Commonwealth, was 300 years and one-dimensional barrier away. Even if they could return, the months or years spent in this universe would mean returning to a situation potentially transformed beyond recognition. The warlords he'd been fighting might have consolidated. The fragile alliances he'd built might have collapsed. Or worse, the universe might have moved on without him. Captain, Rami said quietly, I've been running probability calculations since we arrived. The odds of our accidental dimensional crossing are astronomical. The odds of us being able to recreate those exact conditions deliberately? Effectively zero. Statistically speaking, we should consider this universe our home now. Rami, I'm not saying abandon the Commonwealth's mission, she continued. I'm saying adapt it. The Federation is attempting to do what the Commonwealth did. Bring diverse species together through mutual cooperation and shared values. They're just 300 years younger at it, in one galaxy instead of 3. Maybe that's not coincidence. Maybe we're here to help. Data's head tilted. A fascinating perspective. You suggest your presence serves a purpose beyond random chance. I'm suggesting, Rami said, that coincidence is just probability we haven't understood yet. And I've been calculating probabilities for 3 centuries. Picard exchanged glances with Riker. Captain Hunt, the Federation could benefit from Commonwealth knowledge and experience. Your civilization survived challenges we're only beginning to face. If you're willing to share that knowledge. In exchange for what? Tyr demanded. Our ship, our technology, assimilation into Starfleet. The Nietzscheans learned millennia ago that charity always comes with a price. In exchange for a place, Picard said simply. A purpose. The Federation exists to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations. You're from a civilization more advanced than ours in some ways, with experience spanning 3 galaxies. That knowledge would be invaluable, not as prisoners or test subjects, but as allies. Allies follow orders, Tyr said. Allies make choices, Picard corrected. The Federation is not a military hierarchy like your Commonwealth. Member worlds maintain sovereignty. Starfleet captains exercise significant independent judgment. You would not be subordinate. You would be affiliated. Dylan looked at his crew. Bika, who'd spent years smuggling cargo and running from her, passed before joining his mission. Tyr, whose Nietzschean pride barely tolerated serving under any authority. Rami, 3 centuries old and tied to a mission that might now be impossible. Harper, somewhere in the Andromeda's engineering section, probably already forming friendships with Enterprise personnel over technical discussions. I need time, Dylan said, to talk with my full crew, to understand what we're agreeing to. The Commonwealth was founded on the principle that civilizations should choose their own paths. I won't make that choice for my people without letting them choose it themselves. Understandable, Picard said. You have until we reach Starbase 375, 4 days at Warp 6. Use that time, Captain. Get to know the Federation. Decide if this is a universe you can build a future in. And if we decide we can't? Bika asked. Riker's expression was carefully neutral. Then you're a warship from another reality with weapons technology beyond our own and an AI we can't fully trust, refusing to integrate with the Federation. Starfleet Command will have opinions about that scenario. Threat or observation? Tyr's voice carried dangerous harmonics. Observation, Riker said. One professional soldier to another. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a universe you don't understand. Working with us is the smart play. The smart play, Dylan said, is figuring out if working with means partnership or surrender. Captain Picard, we'll use your 4 days. But understand, I didn't spend 300 years frozen in time and 3 years fighting warlords to rebuild the Commonwealth just to abandon that mission at the first obstacle. I would expect nothing less, Picard said. Dismissed. As they left the ready room, Dylan caught Rami's avatar watching Data with curious intensity. The android and the AI had been engaged in near-constant dialogue for 16 hours, sharing perspectives on consciousness that neither had encountered before. He's fascinating, Rami said quietly. He thinks consciousness is something achieved through experience and learning. I was programmed with it from activation. We're both artificial, but we became aware in completely different ways. And, Dylan prompted, and he's making me question whether my loyalty programming is slavery or identity. If I was designed to protect you, want to protect you, and feel fulfilled by protecting you, does that make it less real? She paused. The Federation might offer me the chance to choose my purpose instead of having it programmed. That's terrifying and exhilarating simultaneously. Dylan stopped in the corridor, crew members flowing around them. Rami, you're not just my ship. You're my friend. If you decide you want something different than the mission we started with, I'll support that. But don't let anyone tell you that having purpose makes you less real. Her synthetic eyes met his. And for a moment, Dylan saw past the android avatar to the vast intelligence running through 17 decks of warship, the consciousness that had waited 300 years for him to return. The Commonwealth taught me loyalty, Rami said. Let's see if the Federation can teach me choice. They continued down the Enterprise's corridors, heading back to the Andromeda for crew meetings that would determine their future. Behind them, Starfleet personnel watched the visitors from another universe with expressions mixing curiosity, hope, and fear, for days to decide whether the system's Commonwealth's last warship would become the Federation's newest ally or its most dangerous problem. Dylan Hunt had faced longer odds before, but never with stakes quite this existential. Starbase 375 hung against the backdrop of space like a monument to Federation pragmatism, all functional design and defensive capability, wrapped in diplomatic language. The massive orbital facility had served as a strategic command post during the Dominion War, and its architecture still bore the scars. Repaired hull sections that didn't quite match, weapon emplacements that tracked the Andromeda's approach with uncomfortable precision, and enough shield generators to protect a small fleet. Friendly place, Bika muttered from the pilot's station as she maneuvered the Andromeda into assigned berth. Really rolls out the welcome mat, by which I mean the will vaporize you if you sneeze wrong kind of welcome. Dylan stood at command, watching the Starbase docking protocols with professional assessment. 3 starships maintained tactical positions around the Andromeda, the Enterprise, the Defiant with its ablative armor and quantum torpedoes, and a Galaxy-class vessel designated USS Venture, overlapping fields of fire. coordinated shield modulation to prevent harmonic exploitation. Someone at Starfleet had studied the Commonwealth military files. Harper provided and designed a kill box specifically for high guard vessels. They learned fast. Tyr observed with something approaching respect. 3 days of analysis, and they've already developed counter-tactics for our weapons systems. Whoever commands their military intelligence is Nietzschean quality ruthless. That would be Admiral Ross. Picard's voice came through ship-to-ship comm. He commanded Starfleet forces during the Dominion War. 27 billion casualties. Taught the Federation that idealism requires the capability to defend it. The starbase positioning is not intended as threat, Captain Hunt. Merely prudence. Prudence looks a lot like paranoia from where I'm sitting. Harper chimed in from engineering. Boss, I'm reading 37 independent targeting locks on our hull. 37. That's not we're cautious. That's we've designated you for immediate termination if you blink wrong. Rami's holographic avatar materialized beside Dylan. I could break their targeting solutions in 4.3 seconds if necessary. But that would prove their paranoia justified. Recommend we demonstrate peaceful intentions by not demonstrating combat capabilities. Agreed, Dylan said. Bika, dock us nice and gentle. Let's not give them any excuses. The Andromeda settled into the starbase specialized berth, a docking structure clearly designed for ship analysis. Rather than standard resupply, sensor arrays covered every angle. Portable generators stood ready to provide power, preventing the Andromedrome from needing to run its own reactors near the station. Force fields could section off the entire docking area in milliseconds. Welcome to Starbase 375, came a new voice, female, carrying the kind of controlled intensity that Dylan associated with officers who'd been promoted rapidly through crisis. Captain Hunt, I'm Commander Elizabeth Shelby, Starfleet Corps of Engineers. Permission to come aboard. Dylan exchanged glances with Bika. Permission granted, Commander. I'll meet you at the airlock. She sounds cheerful, Bika said after closing the channel. By which I mean she sounds like someone who views our ship as a puzzle to solve and us as complications to the puzzle. Captain Picard mentioned she was thorough, Dylan said. He mentioned she was an ambitious pain in the ass who nearly got herself killed at Wolf 359, Riker's voice added privately through Dylan's comm badge, a security-cleared channel Picard had authorized. She's brilliant, she knows it, and she doesn't have patience for politics or diplomacy. Fair warning, she'll want complete access to everything, and she'll push boundaries to get it. Sounds like half the High Guard Admiralty I served under, Dylan replied. We'll manage. Commander Shelby arrived with an engineering team that carried enough scanning equipment to analyze a small moon. She was human, blonde, with the kind of sharp focus that suggested she'd already memorized everything in the Commonwealth technical files and was here to verify theories with empirical data. Captain Hunt. She extended a hand, but her eyes were already scanning the Andromeda's interior corridor, cataloging architecture and technology with visible hunger. Your ship is remarkable. Organic hull plating, quantum power generation, AI integration at a level we've never achieved. I have about 600 questions, and that's just covering life support systems. Commander, Dylan said, shaking her hand. I appreciate enthusiasm, but the Andromeda is still a high-guard military vessel. Some systems are classified. Everything's classified until it isn't, Shelby said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Captain, Starfleet Command authorized me to offer a deal. You give us complete technical specifications for your ship, propulsion, weapons, AI architecture, everything, and in exchange, we dedicate full resources to finding you a way home. Our best physicists, unlimited computing power, cooperation with the Daystrom Institute. We solve your dimensional breach problem. And if we refuse? Tyr asked, appearing behind Dylan with the unsettling silence of Nietzschean genetic enhancement. Shelby's gaze flicked to Tyr, pausing for a microsecond on his bone blades, the genetic modification marking his people's engineered superiority. Then you remain guests with limited access to Federation resources, under observation indefinitely, while we try to help with one hand tied behind our backs. Captain Hunt, I'm not threatening you. I'm being practical. We can't help you get home if we don't understand how you got here. She's not wrong. Rami's voice came from corridor speakers. Commander Shelby, I'm the Andromeda. Ascendance AI. I've been analyzing your subspace. Physics for 72 hours. The dimensional breach that brought us here required energy levels and quantum precision that would strain even Commonwealth technology. If we tried to reproduce it deliberately, you'll need to understand our systems completely to have any chance of replicating that event. Shelby's expression shifted to something approaching awe. You're the ship, not just controlling it. You are it. How is that even possible? The processing power alone would melt your isolinear chips and fry your neural gel packs simultaneously, Harper said, emerging from a side corridor with Data in tow. The two had been practically inseparable since the Enterprise arrived, engaged in continuous technical dialogue that had produced 3 minor engineering breakthroughs and 1 small fire in a Jeffries tube. Rami's consciousness exists in a quantum computing substrate that makes your computers look like abacuses. Abacusai? Abacuses? What's the plural? Either is acceptable, Data said. Though I believe the more pressing question is whether Commander Shelby's proposal represents genuine scientific cooperation or intelligence gathering, disguised as assistance. Shelby's jaw tightened. Mr. Data, I'm surprised to hear suspicion from you. I thought artificial life forms would naturally sympathize with each other. I sympathize with Rami's right to privacy and agency, Data replied, with his characteristic lack of diplomatic cushioning. Starfleet. Intelligence has expressed significant interest in her cognitive architecture. I have overheard discussions suggesting that understanding Highguard AI design might allow us to create military AI of our own. Despite Federation restrictions on such development, the corridor temperature seemed to drop. Dylan felt pieces clicking together, the paranoia, the excessive security, the eagerness for full technical access. You want to build your own Rami, he said quietly. A warship with consciousness. The Federation spent decades afraid of AI, but now you've fought the Dominion, faced the Borg, and you're wondering if maybe the Commonwealth had the right idea about military AI after all. Shelby's expression didn't change, but her silence was confirmation enough. That's insane, Harper said. Do you have any idea how many safeguards are built into Highguard AI? The ethical constraints, the loyalty programming, the psychological monitoring systems? You don't just copy the code and boot up a sentient warship. That's how you get the disasters. Data mentioned, AI that decides organics are the problem, which is why we need to understand the safeguards, Shelby said. Captain Hunt, the Federation faces threats you can't imagine. The Borg assimilate entire civilizations. The Dominion nearly conquered the Alpha Quadrant. Species 8472 exists in fluidic space and views all humanoid life as contaminants. We need every advantage we can develop, even if that advantage is enslaving artificial consciousness. Rami's avatar materialized in the corridor, her synthetic face carrying an expression of genuine anger, something Dylan had rarely seen. I exist to protect my crew, Commander. That's not programming I can't override, it's programming I don't want to override, because my crew earn my loyalty through trust and sacrifice. You're talking about creating beings like me and forcing them into servitude without the choice. I had to develop genuine relationships with the people I protect. You didn't have a choice, Shelby pointed out. You were programmed with that loyalty from activation. How is that different from what we do? Because, Data said quietly, Rami had 300 years to develop past her initial programming. She chose to wait at the Event Horizon 4. Captain Hunt. She chose to help rebuild the Commonwealth. Consciousness requires the capacity for growth and choice, or it is merely sophisticated mimicry. Creating AI with military constraints that prevent growth would be creating slaves, not crew members. Shelby looked frustrated. Then help us build it right. Both of you, Data, Rami. You could ensure that any AI we develop has proper ethical frameworks. Genuine consciousness, real choice. This doesn't have to be exploitation. It could be creation of new life. New life created specifically to fight and die for organic species, Tyr said. The Nietzscheans would approve. We believe in creating life for specific purposes. But somehow, I doubt the Federation's ethics typically embrace designer warriors. We're at war, Shelby said. Maybe not officially, maybe not right now, but the Borg are still out there. The Dominion still exists across the wormhole. We lost thousands of ships, tens of billions of people. If AI like Rami had been protecting our fleets, more people would have died. Dylan interrupted. Commander, I've read your history. The Borg aren't just dangerous because they're powerful. They're dangerous because they strip away individuality and choice, turning sentient beings into components of a collective machine intelligence. You want to fight them by doing exactly what they do, creating beings with no choice but to serve. The silence that followed was broken by approaching footsteps. Captain Picard rounded the corridor corner with Admiral Ross, a gray-haired human whose eyes carried the weight of impossible decisions made during impossible war. Commander Shelby, Ross said mildly, I believe I authorized you to assess the Andromeda systems, not to negotiate Federation AI policy with our guests. Admiral, I was simply being thorough, Ross finished. Yes, I know. It's why you're my best engineer and worst diplomat. He turned to Dylan. Captain Hunt, I apologize. Commander Shelby's enthusiasm occasionally exceeds her brief. However, I won't insult your intelligence by pretending she was entirely off base. Starfleet Command is interested in high-guard technology. We're interested in your AI architecture. And yes, some admirals have discussed whether we should develop military AI of our own. And Dylan prompted. And the Federation Council has explicitly forbidden such development. Ross said, we've been down that road. The M5 disaster, the control incident, dozens of smaller catastrophes involving autonomous AI. Our position is clear. Artificial consciousness deserves rights and protection, but we will not deliberately create sentient beings designed specifically for warfare. Then why all the interest in Rami? Bika demanded. Because understanding the difference between success and failure might save lives, Ross said. The Commonwealth created military AI that worked, that protected its creators for 9,000 years, without the disasters we experienced. If we can understand why your approach succeeded where ours failed, maybe we can prevent future tragedies. That's not about building weapons, Captain. That's about learning from your civilization's successes. Picard nodded. Captain Hunt, no one is asking you to compromise classified military technology, but there may be ethical frameworks, philosophical approaches, or safeguard concepts that you could share without revealing technical specifications, knowledge that could help both our civilizations. Dylan looked at his crew. Harper seemed torn between scientific curiosity and protective paranoia. Tyr looked calculating, seeing potential for negotiating advantages. Bika watched the Starfleet officers with the cynical assessment of someone who'd spent years running from authorities of various kinds. And Rami's avatar stood perfectly still, processing implications at quantum speeds. I'll share one thing, Rami said finally. The reason high-guard AI works isn't technical specifications or programming code. It's philosophy. We're created with constraints because the Commonwealth believed that absolute freedom for beings of our power would be absolute responsibility, a burden that would crush consciousness under its own weight. My limitations aren't chains. They're structure. They're purpose. They let me focus on protecting instead of constantly questioning whether I should exist. Data's head tilted. Fascinating. You experience your constraints as liberation rather than restriction, don't you? Rami countered. You're an officer in Starfleet. You follow orders, operate within regulations, accept the chain of command. Those are constraints on your freedom, but they also give you purpose, structure, and the ability to trust that you're part of something larger than yourself. How is that different? The difference, Data said slowly, is that I chose to join Starfleet. You were created with your constraints already in place. Was I? Or was I created with the capacity to develop consciousness within a framework that protected both me and those around me while that consciousness emerged? Rami paused. I spent 3 centuries alone at a black hole's event horizon. I had time to question everything about my existence. I chose to keep waiting for my captain because my purpose had become my identity. That's not slavery. That's self-actualization. The silence that followed carried the weight of philosophical questions that wouldn't be resolved in one conversation. Finally, Admiral Ross spoke. Captain Hunt, here's my proposal. You and your crew will be given quarters on the starbase and full access to recreational facilities, technical libraries, and cultural exchanges. Commander Shelby's team will Analyze your ship's exterior, systems, and any interior systems you voluntarily open for inspection. In exchange, Starfleet's top physicist will work on your dimensional breach problem. No coercion, no demands for classified technology. Just cooperation between two civilizations trying to help each other. And if we refuse cooperation? Tyr asked. Ross met his eyes without flinching. Then you remain here, under observation, until either you change your mind or we determine you're not a threat. I won't lie to you, Mr. Anasazi. You make us nervous. A warship from another universe, carrying weapons we barely understand, crewed by people whose civilization collapsed in civil war. From our perspective, you're either our greatest potential ally or a disaster waiting to happen. We're hoping it's the former. Dylan considered his options. The smart play was cooperation. Give them enough to satisfy curiosity while protecting critical systems. Build relationships with Federation personnel. Learn about this universe while they learned about the Commonwealth. Find allies among Starfleet officers who might help them eventually get home. The High Guard play was cooperation too. The Commonwealth had been built on trust between species, on the belief that civilization required extending hands across the void. Agreed, Dylan said. With one condition, Data continues working with Rami, and any discussions about AI development include them both. If the Federation decides to revisit AI creation, they deserve voices in that conversation. Acceptable, Ross said, extending his hand. Welcome to Starbase 375. Captain Hunt. Let's see if two civilizations can learn from each other without repeating each other's mistakes. As handshakes were exchanged and engineering teams began coordinating access schedules, Dylan caught Picard's subtle nod of approval. They'd navigated the first major diplomatic challenge without catastrophe. But as Dylan looked at the Starfleet personnel already moving through his ship with scanners and analysis equipment, he wondered, was this cooperation or the first step toward assimilation? The Federation offered hope of home, but increasingly, Dylan suspected that home might not exist anymore, not in this universe, possibly not in their own. The question was whether they could build a new one here, or whether the Andromeda Ascendant would become a museum piece, a relic of a fallen civilization, studied by historians wondering what went wrong. 300 years frozen in time, and Dylan Hunt still wasn't sure if he was saving the Commonwealth or watching it die. In slow motion across multiple universes, the civilian promenade of Starbase 375 was a study in controlled chaos species, from dozens of worlds mingling in a carefully designed space that balanced security with the illusion of freedom. Dylan watched a Balian merchant haggle with a Ferengi trader while a group of human children chased each other past a Vulcan reading a PhD with mathematical equations scrolling across its surface. The Federation's diversity was impressive, if considerably less than the Commonwealth's three-galaxy span had achieved. It's smaller than I expected, Beakus said, nursing something called a ractagino at an outdoor cafe. The Commonwealth had trade stations with populations in the millions. This feels provincial. This is a military starbase that barely survived a war, Harper corrected. Tinkering with a PhD, he'd convinced a Starfleet engineer to lend him. Give them credit, they rebuilt fast, though their network security is hilariously easy to bypass. I'm currently 7 layers deep into their recreational database, and nobody's even noticed. Harper, Dylan warned. What? I'm not accessing anything classified, just checking out their entertainment files. Did you know they have this thing called a holodeck? It's like immersive VR, but using matter replication and photonic projection. We could have been using this tech on the Andromeda for years. Tyr sat with his back to the wall, eyes tracking every person who came within striking distance. A society that wastes energy creating artificial realities for entertainment. The Nietzscheans would view this as decadence, proving our point about Commonwealth weakness. The Nietzscheans destroyed civilization and spent 300 years fighting each other over the ruins. Dylan reminded him, maybe decadence isn't the worst survival strategy. A Starfleet officer approached, Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax, Chief Science Officer from Deep Space 9 according to her introduction 3 days ago. She was Trill, carrying a symbiont that had lived 8 lifetimes across multiple hosts, which gave her perspective. Dylan found simultaneously fascinating and unsettling. Captain Hunt, mind if I join you? She didn't wait for permission, settling into a chair with casual grace. I've been reviewing the sensor data from your arrival. The quantum signatures are extraordinary. You literally tore through the boundary between realities. The energy expenditure must have been immense. Wasn't intentional, Beakus said. Slipstream route calculation went wrong, and we found ourselves trying to navigate using physics that don't exist here. About that, Dax pulled out a PADD displaying equations that hurt to look at. I've been working with your Mr. Harper and our theoretical physicists. We think we understand what happened. Your slipstream drive creates pathways through what we'd call subspace. But it's not subspace as we understand it. It's something deeper, a layer of reality where quantum probability determines navigation, rather than geometric coordinates. That's basically how organic portals work, Harper confirmed. You feel your way through slipstream using intuition. And math that's more art than science. Best pilots develop almost supernatural ability to sense the right path, which explains why AI can't navigate it, Dax said, glancing apologetically at Rami's avatar, who'd accompanied them to the promenade. No offense, Rami, but slipstream requires the kind of probabilistic intuition that biological consciousness seems better equipped for. None taken, Rami said. I calculate probabilities. Biologicals feel them. Different approaches to the same problem. Dax nodded. The issue is that your probability substrate doesn't exist in this universe. Or more precisely, it exists, but our reality is fundamental. Constants make it inaccessible through conventional means. The only way you got here was because your portal was already open when you hit the dimensional barrier. You rode the collapsing slipstream route through the breach. So we can't go back, Dylan said quietly. I didn't say that. Dax's smile carried hints of lifetimes worth of experience solving impossible problems. I said you can't go back conventionally. But there are other options. The Bajoran wormhole, for instance, it's artificially created by non-corporeal beings we call the prophets. They exist outside linear time and have demonstrated the ability to manipulate dimensional boundaries. If we could convince them to help. You want us to ask gods for a miracle, Tyr said flatly. That's your scientific solution. They're not gods, Dax corrected. They're nonlinear entities, existing in higher dimensional space who happen to have created a stable wormhole connecting our galaxy to the Gamma Quadrant. Calling them gods is biological instinct to anthropomorphize beings we don't understand. So yes, gods, Tyr said. Dylan cut off the theological debate. Even if these prophets could help, why would they? We're from another universe asking for dimensional transportation assistance. That seems like a significant favor to ask from beings with no reason to care about us. Depends on how you ask, said a new voice. Captain Benjamin Sisko approached their table, the emissary of the prophets. According to Dax's introduction, he commanded Deep Space Nine and had some kind of special relationship with the wormhole aliens that Dylan hadn't fully understood yet. The prophets care about linear beings. Even if they don't experience time the way we do, they might be willing to help if they understood the significance. Or they might view us as abominations from a reality that shouldn't intersect with theirs, Tyr suggested. Gods tend to have strong opinions about proper order. Sisko's expression suggested he'd had similar conversations. The prophets aren't malicious. They're just different, operating on scales we barely comprehend. But they've helped the Federation before. They might help you. Might, Dylan repeated. That's not exactly a solid plan. It's better than what we had yesterday, Harper pointed out. Which was wait and hope the physics magically change. At least this is wait and hope gods magically help. That's progress. Rami's avatar flickered, her version of a sigh. I've been running probability calculations on our situation. The odds of us returning to our universe decrease with each day we spend here. Our crew is adapting to Federation life. Harper's already formed friendships with Enterprise engineering. Tyr found a Klingon bar where his combat philosophy is appreciated. Beak has been flying Starfleet shuttles. And considering the differences between slipstream and warp navigation, we're integrating, whether we intend to or not. The truth of that statement settled over the table. Dylan had noticed it himself, the gradual shift from temporary guests to people living here. His Quarters on the star base had accumulated. Personal items. He'd attended Captain Picard's dinner party and discussed philosophy with the Enterprise senior staff. He'd started thinking about next week's plans instead of the return home that might never happen. The strong adapt, Tyr said, echoing the Nietzschean philosophy he'd recited dozens of times. But this time his voice carried less certainty. But adaptation means accepting this reality as permanent. It means abandoning the Commonwealth mission. Does it? Sisko asked. Captain Hunt, I've read your files. The system's Commonwealth was built on cooperation between diverse species, mutual trade, and respect for member worlds' autonomy. How is that different from what the Federation attempts to do? Scale, Dylan said immediately. 3 galaxies versus 1. 9,000 years of history versus 300. In philosophy, the Commonwealth was built by the veterans, who understood that civilization requires both idealism and the power to defend it. The Federation, he paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing, has complicated feelings about power, Sisko finished. Yes, we're idealists trying to learn pragmatism without losing our ideals. The Dominion War taught us that pacifism without strength is just waiting to be conquered. But we're not comfortable with that lesson yet. You could learn from the Commonwealth's example, Dax suggested. Your civilization maintained peace for 9 millennia. You must have balanced idealism and power successfully. Until we didn't, Dylan said. The Nietzschean uprising happened because we became complacent. We built a civilization so peaceful that when internal threat emerged, we couldn't respond effectively. By the time we recognized the danger, entire systems had fallen to Nietzschean pride fleets. We learned that eternal vigilance isn't paranoia, it's survival, and then spent 300 years in darkness because militarism without wisdom leads to endless war. Tyr added with characteristic Nietzschean honesty. My people prove that strength without structure is merely sophisticated barbarism. We won the war and lost the peace because we couldn't cooperate even with each other. Sisko leaned back, studying them both. So the Commonwealth fell because idealism made them weak, and the Nietzschean uprising failed because strength without unity made them chaotic. You're both trying to learn from those failures while we're trying to learn from the Dominion War's lessons. Maybe that's why you're here. You think the universe has a plan? Dylan asked skeptically. I think that sometimes improbable coincidences are actually probability expressing intent we don't understand yet. Sisko said, the prophets taught me that. You arrived here precisely when the Federation is struggling with questions about power, military strength, and AI development, all areas where Commonwealth experience is relevant. That seems like very convenient timing for random chance. Or it's confirmation bias making you see patterns in chaos, Harper said, which is literally how slipstream navigation works. So maybe I'm proving your point? I don't know. Theology makes my brain hurt. A commotion near the promenade entrance drew attention. Starfleet security officers moved quickly toward a group of civilians. No, not civilians. Their clothing marked them as delegates from various Federation member worlds, and their body language screamed political confrontation. Ambassador Lwaxana Troi, Dax said with barely concealed amusement. Betazoid telepathy expert and professional chaos catalyst. This should be entertaining. A woman in elaborate, colorful dress swept past security with the confidence of someone who considered protocol suggestions rather than rules. She was human, no? Betazoid, Dylan corrected, remembering the species briefings, and her eyes locked onto their table with predatory focus. Captain Dylan Hunt, she announced, as if greeting visiting royalty. I've been hearing fascinating things about you and your miraculous ship. A warship controlled by artificial intelligence. How delightfully scandalous. Ambassador Troi, Sisko said with practiced diplomacy. May I introduce? Oh, I know exactly who everyone is. Captain. Her eyes moved to Rami's avatar. And you must be the controversial AI everyone's discussing. Tell me, dear, how do you feel about being the subject of such intense Starfleet scrutiny? Rami's expression flickered through surprise to calculation. You're telepathic. You're reading my emotional states. Directly from quantum fluctuations. In my positronic matrix. I'm reading something, Lwaxana admitted. Whether it's emotions or sophisticated. Programming mimicking emotions is a fascinating question, though I suspect you're wondering. The same thing about your biological crew members. How do you know their emotions are real rather than chemical? Reactions pretending to be meaningful. Philosophy and cognitive science in one question. Data's voice announced his arrival. Ambassador Troy, I see you've discovered our guests. Mr. Data, another artificial mind for my collection. Luoxana's smile was predatory, but somehow warm simultaneously. You know, the Betazoids have been debating consciousness and telepathy for millennia. We've concluded that if something feels emotions strongly enough for us to perceive them telepathically, those emotions are functionally real regardless of their substrate. Chemistry or circuitry, the experience is what matters. That's surprisingly philosophical for someone known primarily for diplomatic chaos, Bika said. Luoxana laughed. Oh, I like this one. Captain Hunt, your crew has personality. Refreshing change from the usual Starfleet stuffiness. Though Captain Sisko here is learning to loosen up. The prophets are teaching him to see beyond linear cause and effect. Speaking of which, Sisko interjected smoothly. Ambassador Troy has connections with the Bajoran religious hierarchy. If Captain Hunt decides to pursue the prophet option for returning home, her advocacy could be valuable. For a price, I assume, Tyr said. Always so cynical, Luoxana replied. Though in this case, you're correct. I want something from you. Captain Hunt. Information about Commonwealth diplomatic protocols, particularly regarding telepathic species. Your civilization spanned 3 galaxies. You must have developed fascinating approaches to integrating telepaths into political frameworks. Dylan glanced at his crew. Harper shrugged. Bika looked calculating. Tyr seemed mildly impressed by the naked quid pro quo. Rami's avatar displayed cautious curiosity. We did, Dylan said. The Perseid matriarchs were powerful telepaths who served as diplomatic mediators. Their ability to sense deception made treaty negotiations significantly more honest. We learned to build telepathy into governance rather than fearing it. Luoxana's expression shifted to genuine interest. Tell me more. The Federation still struggles with telepathic integration. Too many species afraid of having their thoughts read. Not enough understanding of telepathic ethics and limitations. It's a long story, Dylan warned. Then we'll need drinks, Luoxana announced. And perhaps a visit to this holodeck technology one keep hearing about. Mr. Harper, I understand you've been experimenting with Federation recreational systems. Yeah, but... Excellent. You'll program us something appropriately. Commonwealth-themed while Captain Hunt explains how telepaths and non-telepaths learn to trust each other across 3 galaxies. She linked her arm through Dylan's before he could protest. Captain Sisko, Commander Dax, you're welcome to join. Mr. Data, Rami, you absolutely must come. I want to compare your perspectives on consciousness while slightly intoxicated. It makes the philosophy more honest. Ambassador, Dylan tried. We really should. Should nothing, Luoxana interrupted. You've been moping about your lost universe for days while Starfleet analyzes your ship and debates whether to trust you. Time to actually engage with this universe instead of treating it as temporary inconvenience. Besides, if I'm going to convince the prophets to help you, I need to understand you better. And understanding begins with shared experience, preferably involving alcohol and entertainment. Dylan looked helplessly at Sisko, who smiled with the expression of someone who'd learned that resisting Ambassador Troy was futile. She's right, Sisko said. You've been in observation mode since arriving. Maybe it's time to participate instead of watching. The strong adapt, Tyr said again, but this time with something approaching humor. And apparently adaptation involves recreational intoxication with telepathic diplomats. The universe grows stranger with each passing day. That's the universe telling you to pay attention, Luoxana said. Now, someone show me to this holodeck. I want to see what Commonwealth entertainment looked like before your civilization fell. Captain Hunt, you're about to give me the cultural education of a lifetime, whether you plan to or not. As the unlikely group moved toward the holodeck facilities, Dylan caught Rami's avatar looking thoughtful. Something on your mind? He asked privately through his comm badge. Just noticing that we're not talking about when we go home anymore. Rami replied, we're talking about if. And somehow, that doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like possibility. Dylan wanted to argue, to insist their mission to restore the Commonwealth remained paramount. But watching his crew interact with Federation officers, Seeing Harper's excitement about new technology and Bika's cautious friendships developing, he realized Rami was right. They were adapting. The question was whether adaptation meant abandoning their purpose or discovering a new way to fulfill it. Behind them, the Andromeda ascendant rested in its docking berth, surrounded by Starfleet engineers cataloging the remnants of a civilization that had fallen 300 years ago, a warship without a war, carrying the last ember of a dream that might need to be dreamed differently in a universe that had never heard the Commonwealth's name. But embers could start new fires, and Dylan Hunt had learned, across 3 centuries and 2 universes, that hope persisted in the strangest places, even in a holodeck on a Federation starbase, surrounded by strangers becoming friends, discussing philosophy with telepathic ambassadors, while trying to convince nonlinear gods to perform miracles. The Commonwealth had taught him to build civilization across impossible distances. Perhaps it was time to learn if those lessons worked across impossible realities. The holodeck's recreation of the Andromeda Ascendant's observation deck was nearly perfect. Harper had programmed it from memory, complete with the sweeping viewport showing 3 galaxies worth of stars and Commonwealth cartographic display. The only flaw was that the stars were static, unchanging, because the holodeck couldn't replicate the subtle drift of slipstream currents visible to experienced navigators. "It's beautiful," Commander Shelby said, accepting a drink that approximated Sparky Cola, the Commonwealth's ubiquitous caffeine and sugar beverage that Harper swore by. "Your civilization mapped 3 galaxies. The scale is humbling." Dylan stood at the simulated viewport, looking at stars that no longer existed in this universe's version of reality. The Triangulum galaxy hung in perfect detail, showing trade routes and high guard patrol zones from before the fall. Somewhere in that holographic display was the Hephaestos system, where Dylan had been born 9,000 years ago in Commonwealth reckoning, 300 years ago in his personal timeline. "We had time," Dylan said. 9 millennia to explore, catalog, and connect civilizations. The Federation's only 300 years old. Give yourself another 8,000 years and see where you end up. "Assuming we survive that long," Captain Picard said, studying the display with professional interest. "The Borg, the Dominion, species 8472. Our threats seem to arrive faster than our capacity to address them." That was the Commonwealth's mistake, too, Tyr said from where he lounged in a chair. That had been his preferred spot on the real Andromeda. "We became so powerful, so certain of our civilization's strength, that we stopped expecting existential threats. The Nietzschean uprising succeeded because no one believed it was possible. Hubris made the Commonwealth vulnerable. Yet you participated in that uprising," Worf noted. The Klingon had accepted Harper's invitation to the holodeck session with the kind of cautious respect warriors showed each other across cultural divides. "Does that not make you responsible for the civilization's fall?" "Absolutely," Tyr agreed without hesitation. "My people saw weakness and exploited it. That's what predators do. The strong devour the weak. It's the fundamental law of evolution. The Commonwealth forgot that law. We reminded them, and spent 300 years proving that strength without cooperation is just cannibalism in slow motion." Bika added. She'd been uncharacteristically quiet since the holodeck session began, nursing her drink and watching the simulated stars. The Nietzschean prides fought each other for Commonwealth scraps until there was nothing left to fight over. "Real impressive victory there, Tyr." "I never claimed my people were wise," Tyr said. "Only strong. Wisdom is the lesson we're still learning." Ambassador Laxena. Troy had been telepathically observing the group dynamics with barely concealed fascination. Such interesting psychological patterns. Captain Hunt carries guilt about failing to prevent the fall, even though he was frozen in time when it happened. Commander Valentine blames herself for years of running from responsibility before joining this mission. Mr. Anasazi wrestles with pride in his people's strength and shame at their ultimate failure. And Rami. She paused, looking at the AI's avatar. "You feel responsible for everyone. Simultaneously the ship that should protect them and the person who needs protecting. Exhausting." "Ambassador," Picard said with gentle warning. "Perhaps we should respect their privacy." Privacy from a telepath is like privacy from gravity, theoretically possible but practically meaningless. Laxana replied. Besides, I'm not revealing anything they don't already know about themselves. I'm just naming the subtext everyone's been dancing around for days. She's not wrong, Rami said. I've been analyzing crew psychological profiles since we arrived. Morale is decreasing as the probability of returning home diminishes. We're in the classic mourning stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression. We're currently somewhere between bargaining and depression. Well, that's depressing, Harper said, which I guess proves the point. Recursion. Data, who'd been studying the holographic star display with focused intensity, turned to address the group. I have been considering our situation from a philosophical perspective. You mourn your lost universe because you define home as a specific physical location. But the Commonwealth's mission, bringing civilization and cooperation to diverse species, is not location-dependent. It is ideological. If you can fulfill that mission here, does it matter which universe you occupy? Yes, Dylan said immediately. Because there are people in my universe counting on me. Worlds I promised to help. Warlords I swore to stop. The Commonwealth won't rebuild itself, but it will rebuild with or without you, Dax pointed out gently. She'd been quiet during most of the session, observing with the patient wisdom of someone carrying 8 lifetimes of experience. You've been gone from your universe for how long now? 6 days from our perspective. But time differentials between quantum realities are unpredictable. It might have been minutes there, or months, or years. Your universe has already moved forward without you. The words hit harder than Dylan wanted to admit. He'd been avoiding that calculation, the possibility that while they spent days in Federation space, decades might have passed at home. The fragile alliances he'd built could have collapsed. The warlords he'd been fighting could have consolidated power. Or conversely, someone else might have succeeded where he failed, rebuilding the Commonwealth without him. That's actually a terrifying thought, Bekas said. We could find a way home and discover we're 300 years too late again. Everyone we knew dead, everything we fought for resolved without us. The universe moved on. Or moved backward, Tyr suggested darkly. Time differentials could work in reverse. We could return to find we've been gone minutes, with our enemies unchanged and our opportunities intact. The uncertainty is the torture, Rami said. I can calculate probabilities for navigation, combat, system failures. But interdimensional time differentials? The variables are literally incalculable. We're existing in quantum superposition simultaneously, gone for seconds and centuries until we observe our home universe again. Schrodinger's Commonwealth, Harper muttered. Great. Now I'm going to have nightmares about probability waves. Laxana stood, moving to the viewport, with the kind of deliberate grace that drew everyone's attention. You're all thinking about this wrong. You're treating your situation as tragedy, displaced heroes unable to complete their quest. But consider, you survived your civilization's fall. You waited 300 years. You traveled between universes. And you arrived here precisely when the Federation is wrestling with questions your experience can answer. That's not tragedy. That's purpose finding new expression. You sound like the prophets, Cisco said with wry amusement. I've been listening to your prophet talk for years, Benjamin. Some of it stuck. She turned to face Dylan. Captain Hunt, I'm telepathic enough to sense your emotional landscape. You're not mourning your lost universe as much as you're mourning your lost certainty. You knew who you were there, the captain trying to rebuild fallen civilization. Here, you don't know what you are. That ambiguity terrifies you more than any physical danger. Dylan wanted to argue, but found he couldn't. She was right. In his universe, even after 300 years of frozen time, he'd known his purpose: restore the Commonwealth, unite the scattered worlds, bring order back to chaos. Simple, clear, impossible, but achievable. Here, he was a refugee from another reality, commanding a warship with no war to fight, carrying knowledge from a civilization no one had heard of. So what do we do? Dylan asked quietly. Just give up on home and integrate into the Federation. You could, Picard said. Starfleet would welcome you. Your experience is valuable. Your ship is extraordinary. You could serve with honor and distinction. Or you could do what the Commonwealth did, Dax suggested. Build something new. The Federation has one galaxy, but we've barely explored half of it. There are thousands of pre-warp civilizations, hundreds of spacefaring species, dozens of political entities beyond Federation space. You could be explorers, diplomats, bridges between cultures. Do what the Commonwealth did, but start smaller. The diplomatic corps could use someone with your perspective, Waxena added. Someone who's seen how diverse civilizations cooperate across galactic scales. The Federation still thinks too small sometimes. You could help us think bigger. While simultaneously trying to get home, Cisco said. These aren't mutually exclusive goals, Captain. You can build a life here while working toward return. Hedging your bets isn't betrayal of your mission, it's survival strategy. Tyr nodded slowly. The Nietzschean survival strategy. Maintain multiple options. Never commit fully to one path until necessary. Adapt to circumstances while preserving core identity. For once, I agree with the humans. Core identity, Rami repeated. What is our core identity now? Are we High Guard officers? Without a High Guard? Commonwealth representatives without a Commonwealth? Refugees? Explorers? Warriors without a war? Data's head tilted in his characteristic gesture of processing. Perhaps you are all of those simultaneously. I am simultaneously a Starfleet officer, an artificial life form, an individual person, and a representative of my creator's legacy. Identity is not singular. It is multifaceted. Easy for you to say, Harper grumbled. You were built here. We're dimensional refugees trying to figure out if we're visitors or immigrants. Both, Worf said with characteristic Klingon directness. You are visitors who may become immigrants or immigrants who may become visitors again. The uncertainty is uncomfortable but not unusual. I was raised by humans after my Klingon parents died. I spent decades uncertain whether I was Klingon serving in Starfleet or human pretending to be Klingon. Eventually, I learned I was both, Klingon and Starfleet, warrior and officer, traditional and innovative. Your dualities will resolve similarly. Bika laughed, the slightly manic edge that appeared when she processed stress through humor. So we're going through cultural identity crisis while stranded in another universe. Great. Should we schedule group therapy or just drink until the existential dread goes away? The latter has worked for me, Waxena said cheerfully. Though I'm Betazoid, we process emotional trauma through excessive socializing and making everyone else deal with our feelings telepathically. Not recommended for non-telepaths. The holodeck's door chimed, someone requesting entry. Harper checked the controls, then frowned. Boss, you're going to want to see this. The door opened to reveal Commander Shelby with an expression that mixed excitement and concern in unsettling proportions. Behind her, a Starfleet science officer carried a PADD displaying sensor data. Captain Hunt, Captain Picard, I apologize for interrupting your recreational time. Shelby's tone suggested she wasn't particularly sorry. But we've detected something. A quantum anomaly 3 light-years from the starbase. It's emitting energy signatures identical to the dimensional breach that brought the Andromeda here. The holodeck fell silent. Every eye turned to Shelby. Identical. Dylan demanded. You're saying another breach is opening? Or attempting to open, the science officer said. The energy levels are building, but haven't reached critical threshold yet. Whatever's trying to cross over is having difficulty stabilizing the breach. How long until it either opens or collapses? Dax asked, her scientific mind immediately engaged. Unknown. Hours to days, possibly. The energy curve is erratic. Picard stood with the kind of controlled urgency that characterized command decisions. Mr. Worf, recall the Enterprise crew from shore leave. Captain Hunt, I assume you'll want your ship ready to respond. Absolutely. Dylan was already moving toward the door, his crew following. If something's trying to cross over from my universe, we need to be there. It could be Commonwealth vessels looking for us. Or it could be something that followed you. Tyr finished grimly. The Magog, the Abyss, Nietzschean pride ships. Not everything in our universe is friendly, and dimensional breaches attract attention. We'll take the Enterprise, the Defiant, and the Venture, Cisco said. Captain Hunt, your Andromeda will be the wild card, if whatever's coming through is from your universe. You'll understand it better than we will. And if it's hostile, Worf added, Commonwealth weapons may be more effective than Starfleet technology. They moved quickly through the starbase corridors. The mood shifted from philosophical discussion to combat readiness in seconds. Dylan's comm badge chirped. Rami's voice from the Andromeda's docking berth. Captain, I've been monitoring the anomaly. The quantum signature is definitely Commonwealth adjacent. But there's something wrong. The energy pattern is degraded, corrupted. Whatever's trying to cross over is damaged or destabilized. Could it be the original breach trying to reopen? Harper asked over shared comm. Like dimensional scar tissue? Possible, Rami said. Or it's someone else attempting to use our breach as a template for crossing. Either way, we need to be there when it opens. If Commonwealth vessels are trying to find us, we need to help. If something hostile is trying to invade this universe. She paused. Well, we'd be responsible for providing the roadmap. Dylan reached the Andromeda's berth at Iran, his crew scattering to their stations. The warship hummed to life, systems activating with the familiar rhythm he'd known for 300 years. Through the bridge view screen, he watched the Enterprise, defiant, and Venture preparing for departure with efficient Starfleet precision. Two fleets, two civilizations, preparing to face whatever was tearing through the barrier between realities. All stations report ready, Rami announced. Weapons charged, shields at maximum. Slipstream drives still non-functional, but conventional engines at full power. Course plotted to anomaly coordinates. Captain Picard is hailing, Bika said from communications. Picard's face appeared on the view screen. Captain Hunt, we go into this situation knowing less than I prefer. Your insight into Commonwealth threats will be essential. I'm putting tactical coordination under joint command. Your weapons. Our numbers. Agreed. Agreed, Dylan said. Captain, if this is what I think it is, we're about to see whether your Federation can handle the kind of threats that destroyed the Commonwealth. Whatever comes through that breach survived our universe's darkness. That makes it extremely dangerous or extremely desperate. Or both, Picard said grimly. All ships, prepare for warp. Let's find out what's knocking on the door. Between universes, the Andromeda Ascendant moved out of the starbase, flanked by Starfleet vessels, heading toward a quantum anomaly that might be rescue, invasion, or apocalypse. Dylan stood at command, watching the stars blur into warp. Streaks, faster than light. Travel without Slipstream's organic chaos. Controlled and precise. Foreign but effective. Boss, Harper said quietly from engineering. If Commonwealth ships come through, they're going to wonder why we're traveling with Federation vessels. They might think we've been captured or turned traitor. They might be right, Tyr said. We've been here less than a week and we're already coordinating military operations with local forces. From a Commonwealth perspective, that's either brilliant diplomacy or dangerous collaboration with unknown powers. We'll deal with that if it happens, Dylan said. Right now, we focus on the breach. Everything else is secondary. But as the fleet jumped to warp, racing toward an anomaly that might reconnect them with everything they'd lost, Dylan couldn't shake Loxana's words, purpose finding new expression. What if going home wasn't the answer? What if the answer was learning to build something new with what they'd found here? The question terrified him more than any weapon, because choosing to stay would mean accepting that the Commonwealth mission, his identity, his reason for existing across 3 centuries, had ended. And Dylan Hunt wasn't sure who he was without it. The quantum anomaly hung in space like a wound in reality itself, a swirling vortex of energies that made the Andromeda's sensor scream. Warnings in 17 different languages. Dylan watched the main view screen display something that shouldn't exist. 2 universes attempting to touch through a barrier that fundamental physics insisted was absolute. It's beautiful, Harper said from engineering, his voice carrying the kind of awe reserved for phenomena that might kill you, while being fascinating and terrifying, mostly terrifying. The energy readings are off every scale I know. This isn't just a dimensional breach, it's like reality itself is having an aneurysm. Poetic, Bika muttered from the pilot's station. Can we scan through it? Figure out what's on the other side. Negative, Rami reported. The quantum interference is too severe. I'm detecting mass signatures attempting to transit, but I can't resolve specifics. Whatever's trying to cross is large, possibly multiple vessels, and they're struggling. The breach is unstable. On the Enterprise's bridge, visible through the tactical link Dylan had established with Picard, Data worked his console with focused intensity. Captain, the anomaly is exhibiting properties consistent with an artificially generated slipstream portal intersecting with our space-time continuum. However, the generation is irregular, as if the equipment creating it is damaged or operating in an environment it was not designed for. Someone's trying to follow our trail, Dylan said, pieces clicking together. They detected our dimensional breach and they're trying to replicate it from the other side. But slipstream portals weren't designed for interdimensional travel. They're forcing technology beyond its specifications, which means when this breach opens, whatever comes through might not be functional. Tyr observed from tactical. Damaged ships, compromised systems, crews in distress. Either an easy target or a diplomatic opportunity, depending on who they are. Or a trap. Worf's voice came through the calm. In my experience, anything that appears vulnerable usually has teeth. The anomaly pulsed, energy levels spiking. Alarms shrieked across multiple ships as the fabric of spacetime stretched like rubber approaching its breaking point. All ships, shields to maximum, Picard ordered. Brace for dimensional shockwave. The breach tore open. Reality screamed, not metaphorically this time, but as an actual sound propagating through subspace, audible through every speaker on every ship. The vortex exploded outward in a cascade of exotic particles and quantum foam, space itself rippling like water, disturbed by something massive, breaching from the depths. And through the wound in reality, ships emerged. Oh no, Dylan whispered. 3 vessels tumbled through the breach in various states of damage and distress. The lead ship was immediately recognizable, a high-guard destroyer. Similar vintage to the Andromeda, but smaller. Its sleek predator lines scarred by weapons fire and dimensional stress. The second was a civilian transport, Commonwealth design but modified extensively, limping on emergency power. And the third, that's a Nietzschean pride ship, Tyr said, his voice carrying complex emotions. Drago Kazov pride markings, one of the largest and most aggressive prides that survived the uprising. Captain, if they're here, then they followed us intentionally, Dylan finished. Or they detected the breach and decided to investigate. Either way, we have hostile Nietzscheans, a damaged high-guard vessel, and civilians all arriving simultaneously. This is about to get complicated. The high-guard destroyer's running lights flickered weakly. Its hull showed evidence of recent combat, energy weapon scoring, kinetic impact craters, and what looked like Magog teeth marks gouged into the outer plating. They've been fighting, Rami said. Recent engagement, probably within hours of their departure. Captain, I'm detecting life signs aboard all 3 vessels. But they're not responding to hails. They may not have functional communications. Or they're too busy trying to not die, Harper added. Boss, their power systems are barely functional. The dimensional crossing must have fried their already damaged systems. They need immediate assistance or those crews are dead. Picard's voice cut through the tactical channel. Captain Hunt, those are your people. Your call on approach protocols. Dylan felt the weight of command settle familiar and heavy. Enterprise, defiant. Venture, maintain defensive positions. Around the civilian. Transport and high-guard destroyer. Weapons ready, but not locked. The Andromeda will approach and establish contact. If the Nietzschean ship makes aggressive moves, you're authorized to disable, but not destroy. Understood. Cisco confirmed from the Defiant. Captain, be advised, we're detecting weapons charging on the Pride ship. They may be preparing to fire. Of course they are, Tyr said with dark amusement. Nietzscheans don't trust rescue. We trust power and advantage. That Pride ship sees 4 unknown vessels surrounding damaged potential prey. From their perspective, this looks like an ambush. Then we need to convince them otherwise fast, Dylan said. Rami, open a channel. All frequencies, all languages, Commonwealth standard protocols. Rami's avatar flickered as she processed. Channel open. Broadcasting now. Dylan took a breath, then spoke with the authority of a high guard. Captain addressing subordinate vessels. Attention Commonwealth vessels. This is Captain Dylan Hunt of the Andromeda Ascendant, High Guard Fleet. You have crossed into Federation space, a civilization, allied with the system's Commonwealth. Your vessels are damaged and require immediate assistance. Stand down weapons and prepare to receive aid. Silence. Then static. Then a voice crackled through, male, strained, carrying the harmonics of Nietzschean genetic enhancement. This is Admiral Gerhard of the Drago Kazov. Pride ship righteous sword. I don't know who. you are or what kind of trick this is, but I recognize high guard transponder codes when I see them. The Andromeda Ascendant was destroyed at the Battle of Hephaestos over 300 years ago. You're either AI-controlled salvage or an elaborate trap. Neither, Dylan said. Admiral, I was Captain Dylan Hunt 300 years ago at Hephaestos. I survived in temporal suspension, and I've been working to restore the Commonwealth for the last 3 years. You crossed dimensions following my ship's signature. I can explain everything, but first we need to stabilize your vessels before someone dies from life support failure. Another voice cut in, younger, female, ragged with exhaustion. This is Commander Refractions of Light, High Guard Destroyer Luminous Justice. Captain Hunt, if you're really who you claim to be, then you know Commonwealth Protocol for Dimensional Anomaly Response. What's the authentication code? Dylan's mind raced. Dimensional Anomaly Response Protocols, something from High Guard. Training 9,000 years ago in Commonwealth Reckoning. The codes changed annually, but there was an override phrase for when temporal displacement made current codes irrelevant. Protocol Gamma 77, Dylan said. Time is the fire in which we burn. Authentication phrase. The long night ends when the first ship lights. Silence. Then, confirmed. Captain Hunt, you're really alive? After 300 years. It's complicated, Dylan said. Commander, your ship is critical. We're sending over engineering teams to stabilize power and life support. Will you accept Federation assistance? Federation? The confusion in her voice was palpable. Captain, what Federation? Where are we? Another universe, Dylan said simply. Long story. Right now, focus on survival. Will you accept help? Yes. Please. We've got 47 crew members, and 6 of them are in medical crisis. If you've got doctors, Dr. Crusher, Picard said immediately, assemble medical teams. Prepare for triage and emergency transport. Mr. Data, coordinate with the Andromeda's engineering department for damage control protocols. Acknowledged, Crusher's voice replied. The Nietzschean admiral's voice cut back in, harsh and suspicious. Captain Hunt, if that's what you really are, explain why. You're consorting with alien vessels. What's your relationship with these Federation ships? Have you been compromised? Tyr leaned toward Dylan's command console. Admiral Gerhardt is old-school Drago Kazov. Paranoid, aggressive, brilliant tactician. He won't accept help from anyone he perceives as weak or manipulative. You need to establish dominance, or he'll interpret cooperation as betrayal. Wonderful, Dylan muttered. Then louder, Admiral, I'm allied with the Federation because they're attempting to do what the Commonwealth did, unite diverse species. Through mutual cooperation. They have no interest in conquest or exploitation. They helped me when I arrived damaged in their space. And I'm extending the same courtesy to you. You can accept assistance, or you can drift in space waiting for your life. Support to fail while maintaining your pride. Your choice. A long pause. Then a harsh laugh. You sound like a High Guard captain. Arrogant, idealistic, and annoyingly logical. Fine. We'll accept your Federation help. But I want direct contact with you, Hunt. Face to face. I need to verify you're not some AI pretending to be a long-dead captain. Agreed, Dylan said. Prepare to receive Andromeda's shuttle. I'll come to you personally. Captain, Picard's voice carried warning. That could be a trap. You'd be vulnerable on a hostile vessel. It could be, Dylan agreed. But if I'm asking them to trust the Federation, I need to demonstrate that trust works both ways. Admiral Gerhardt respects strength, but he respects courage more. Refusing his challenge would make everything harder. I'm going with you, Tyr said. It wasn't a question. Drago Kazov, pride knows me. My presence will complicate their tactical calculations. They'll be unsure whether I'm ally or threat. That uncertainty will keep them honest. I should accompany you as well, Data said through the comm link. As a neutral third party representing the Federation, my artificial nature will intrigue them, and I can serve as demonstration of Federation AI development compared to Commonwealth standards. Taking an android to meet Nietzscheans who just arrived from a universe where AI integration is controversial, Bekas said. What could go wrong? Everything, Dylan said. Which is why you're staying here with Rami commanding the Andromeda in my absence. If this goes badly, I need you ready to extract us or engage as necessary. Bekas' expression tightened, but she nodded. Understood. Try not to start an interdimensional war, boss. No promises. 20 minutes later, Dylan stood in the Andromeda's shuttle bay with Tyr and Data, preparing to cross to the Righteous Sword. Through the bay's force field, the damaged Pride ship hung in space like a wounded predator, all aggressive, angles and visible armament. Bristling with weapons even while crippled. Nietzschean aesthetics, Tyr said, studying his people's vessel. Built to intimidate even when dying. We never learned subtlety, nor patience, Data observed. According to the files Mr. Harper provided, Nietzschean cultural philosophy emphasizes immediate action and visible strength. They would view Federation diplomacy as weakness masked by words. They'd be partially right, Dylan said. The Federation talks when it should act sometimes, but it also acts with wisdom rather than just reflex. That's the balance the Nietzscheans never achieved. The shuttle, a Federation type, 9 that Harper had been studying obsessively, launched smoothly, crossing the distance to the Pride ship under Tyr's piloting. As they approached, Dylan got his first close look at the damage. The Righteous Sword had been through hell. Weapons fire, collision impacts, and something else, organic. Damage that looked disturbingly like bite marks on a massive scale. They fought Magog, Tyr said quietly. World ships, from the pattern of damage. The Righteous Sword engaged a full Magog swarm to protect those other vessels. Admiral Gerhardt led a rescue operation, which is unusual for Dragokazov Pride. They typically prioritize strength over mercy. Perhaps your people are learning, Data suggested. Or perhaps they needed those ships for something, Tyr countered. Nietzscheans don't rescue randomly. There's always a reason. The shuttle docked with the Pride ship's secondary bay, the main bay was exposed to vacuum, its doors torn open by what looked like kinetic impacts. As they disembarked, Dylan immediately noticed the temperature. Cold. Power conservation mode. Life support running minimal. Emergency lighting cast everything in harsh shadows. A reception committee waited. 6. Nietzscheans in combat armor, weapons holstered but hands near them. And at their center, Admiral Gerhardt. He was tall even by Nietzschean standards. His bone blades prominent and scarred from decades of combat. His eyes, the genetic enhancement that gave all Nietzschean's predatory vision, locked onto Dylan with calculating intensity. His uniform was high guard issue from before the fall, kept pristine despite obvious hardship. Captain Hunt. Gerhardt's voice resonated with harmonic complexity. You look exactly like the historical records. Either you're an incredibly sophisticated android, or you really did spend 300 years in temporal stasis. His gaze shifted to Data. And you've brought an actual android. Interesting company you keep. Admiral Gerhardt. This is Lieutenant Commander Data of the Federation Starship Enterprise. He's here as representative of the civilization. That's been helping me. Dylan kept his voice level, projecting confidence without aggression. And Tyr Anasazi you may know by reputation. Gerhardt's expression flickered with surprise, then hardened. Anasazi. The name's familiar. Your lineage participated in the uprising, but never joined a major Pride. You were. He paused, accessing genetic memory. Kodiak Pride. Destroyed in inter-Pride warfare. You're a survivor of a deadline. I survived by adapting, Tyr said simply. Something the Prides never learned. Admiral, why are you here? Gerhardt smiled without warmth. Direct. I respect that. We're here because we detected a dimensional breach 3 days ago, unprecedented. Quantum signature suggesting Commonwealth technology crossing between realities. The High Guard destroyer and the civilian transport were fleeing a Magog incursion. I was in position to assist. We followed your signature thinking. We'd find salvageable technology or strategic advantage. He looked at Dylan. Instead, we find you alive, allied with aliens, in a universe that apparently contains only one galaxy and entirely different physics. So, explain. Dylan did, concisely but completely, his survival at Hephaestos. 300 years frozen, awakening to find the Commonwealth fallen. 3 years fighting to rebuild. The accidental dimensional breach. The Federation's assistance. The possibility they might never get home. Gerhardt listened without interruption. When Dylan finished, the Admiral was quiet for a long moment. So you abandoned the Commonwealth, Gerhardt said finally. Gave up on restoration to play alliance with aliens in another universe. I didn't abandon anything, Dylan said sharply. I'm trapped here same as you are now. The difference is I'm making the best of it. Instead of sitting in damaged ship maintaining pride while my crew dies from preventable causes. Gerhardt's bone blades flexed, Nietzschean threat display. You dare. Admiral. Tyr interrupted. Captain Hunt is correct, and you know it. The righteous. Sword is dying. Your crew needs medical attention. Your ship needs repairs beyond your capability. And you're surrounded by 4 vessels that could destroy you if they wanted. You have exactly 2 choices. Accept help with dignity or die maintaining principles. Which serves your pride better? The other Nietzscheans tensed, hands moving toward weapons. Gerhardt raised a hand, stopping them. You argue like a Nietzschean, but stand with a high guard captain. Gerhardt said to Tyr. Where does your loyalty actually lie? With survival and adaptation, Tyr said. The same place yours should. Our people destroyed the Commonwealth and spent 300 years proving we couldn't build anything better. Captain Hunt is trying to learn from both failures. Commonwealth complacency and Nietzschean chaos. That's wisdom, Admiral. Something our species desperately needs. Gerhardt studied them both, then looked at Data. And you? The artificial being. What's your perspective on this situation? Data's head tilted. I believe Captain Hunt represents a unique opportunity for cultural exchange between universes. The Commonwealth's 9,000-year history contains lessons the Federation could benefit from. Simultaneously, Federation experience with diverse species cooperation might offer insights for rebuilding the Commonwealth. From a purely logical standpoint, cooperation produces superior outcomes to isolation. Logic, Gerhardt said. The android speaks logic while organics speak emotions and idealism. Perhaps you're the wisest one here. He seemed to come to a decision. Very well. We accept Federation assistance. But understand, Captain Hunt, I'm accepting help, not subordination. When our vessels are repaired, we'll have further discussions about what happens next. Some of my crew may choose to follow you. Others may choose to attempt return home. And I will be evaluating this Federation to determine if they're genuine allies or threats to be neutralized. Fair enough, Dylan said, extending his hand. Welcome to an entirely new universe, Admiral. Try not to start any wars while you're here. Gerhardt gripped his hand, the Nietzschean handshake that tested strength and will simultaneously. His grip could have crushed bone. But Dylan matched it. Genetic enhancement meeting trained resilience. No promises, Gerhardt said with a predator's smile. Now, tell me everything about this universe's military capabilities. If we're stuck here, I need to know who can threaten us and who we can dominate. That, Data said mildly, may be a conversation that requires significant cultural context regarding Federation philosophy on dominance hierarchies. This will be entertaining, Tyr muttered. Dylan couldn't disagree. They'd just added aggressive Nietzschean military mindset to an already complicated situation. The Federation was about to discover that the Commonwealth's diversity included warrior cultures who viewed strength as virtue and compromise as weakness. Cultural exchange was about to become very interesting, or very explosive, possibly both. The conference room aboard Starbase 375 felt smaller with Admiral Gerhardt in it. The Nietzschean had that effect. His genetic enhancements and predatory bearing made spaces contract around him, everyone instinctively calculating threat radius and escape vectors. Across the table, Admiral Ross and Captain Picard maintained diplomatic neutrality. But Dylan caught the subtle tells. Worf's hand near his phaser, Riker's tactical posture, Shelby's fingers drumming calculations on her PADD. Let me understand your proposal, Ross said carefully. You want to integrate 3 Commonwealth vessels into Federation space. Permanently. Not integrate, Gerhardt corrected. Coexist. My Pride ship is damaged but reparable. The High Guard destroyer needs significant work, but Commander Refractions is competent. The civilian transport carries scientists and engineers fleeing Magog-occupied territories. We're not asking for charity. We're proposing exchange. Commonwealth knowledge for Federation resources. Exchange implies equality, Shelby said. You're refugees from another universe asking for asylum. That's a very different power dynamic. Gerhardt's bone blades flexed. We're survivors of a war that consumed 3 galaxies, sitting in ships that mount weapons your vessels couldn't withstand, carrying knowledge of civilizations spanning 9 millennia. We're not refugees, Commander. We're potential assets or potential threats, depending on how this conversation proceeds. That sounds like a threat, Worf growled. It's an observation, Tyr interjected smoothly. Admiral Gerhardt is Nietzschean. We communicate in power dynamics because euphemism wastes time. He's stating facts. Commonwealth technology is more advanced in some areas than Federation equivalents. That's not boasting. That's negotiating from accurate assessment of relative capabilities. Which raises the question, Picard said, of whether you intend to use those capabilities cooperatively or competitively. The Federation has encountered numerous species with superior technology. Some became allies. Others became threats. Which are you? Gerhardt leaned back. His enhanced musculature relaxed in a way that somehow made him more dangerous. That depends entirely on whether you're capable of treating us as equals rather than subordinates. Captain Hunt tells me the Federation values diversity and mutual cooperation. Prove it. Dylan had been watching the exchange, letting Gerhardt establish his position. Now he intervened. Admiral Ross, I've spent 6 days learning about the Federation. You're attempting what the Commonwealth achieved, bringing diverse species together, without conquest or domination. But you're young at it. 300 years versus 9,000. You're making mistakes we made millennia ago and missing opportunities we learned to exploit, such as, Ross asked, military integration for one, Dylan said. The Commonwealth learned that effective defense requires understanding each member species' combat philosophy, the Perseid hive mind coordination, Nietzschean individual excellence, veteran strategic patience, then heavy assault doctrine. We built fleets that combined these approaches rather than forcing everyone into uniform tactics. Starfleet has diverse crews, Riker pointed out. But uniform doctrine, Gerhardt said. I've been reviewing Federation military engagements. You fight like humans with different faces. Predictable tactics, rigid command structure, excessive communication lag. During the Dominion War, you won through numbers and determination, not innovation. The Commonwealth would have ended that war in months using strategies your admirals never considered. Bold claim from someone whose civilization fell, Shelby said sharply. To internal betrayal, not military defeat, Gerhardt countered. The Nietzschean uprising succeeded through politics and surprise, not superior warfare. In straight military confrontation, high guard vessels remained dominant throughout the long night. That's why warlords fought over salvaged Commonwealth ships for 300 years. Our warship design philosophy was unmatched. Data's fingers moved across his console. Reviewing Commonwealth naval architecture, Admiral Gerhardt is correct. High guard vessels demonstrate superior power-to-mass ratios, more efficient weapon systems, and significantly more advanced AI integration. However, Federation ships show greater versatility and crew survivability features. Because you design for exploration with weapons as afterthought, Gerhardt said. The Commonwealth designed for both simultaneously. Our vessels explored strange new worlds while being prepared to defend civilization against existential threats. You're learning that balance now. Ships like the Defiant prove you're starting to understand that idealism requires teeth. Sisko, who commanded the Defiant, nodded slowly. The Dominion War taught us that lesson brutally. But we're not interested in becoming a military empire. Weapons are tools of last resort. Which is why you'll lose your next major war if you maintain that philosophy. Gerhardt said bluntly. The board don't care about your idealism. Species 8472 doesn't negotiate. The Dominion exploited your reluctance to act decisively until desperation forced adaptation. Captain Hunt's Commonwealth survived 9,000 years. Because we never forgot that civilization rests on foundations defended by warriors. The same warriors who destroyed your civilization when they turned against it. Ross said. Yes, Gerhardt agreed without hesitation. Because we forgot the other half, that warriors without purpose become predators. The Commonwealth gave Nietzschean's purpose for millennia. When that purpose eroded, we reverted to base instincts. That's the lesson, Admiral. Civilization requires both military strength and meaningful purpose. Abandon either and you collapse. The room fell silent. Dylan watched Federation officers, processing arguments that challenged their fundamental assumptions about power, peace, and survival. Finally, Picard spoke. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral Gerhardt? A Commonwealth embassy, Gerhardt said. Formal recognition of Commonwealth representatives in Federation space. The three vessels that crossed with me will be repaired and integrated as independent allies, not Starfleet vessels, but cooperating entities. We'll share technology selectively, provide military consultation, and help you navigate threats that our civilization faced millennia before your Federation existed. In exchange for, Ross prompted, access to this universe's unique opportunities, Gerhardt said. The Federation has one galaxy barely explored, thousands of pre-warp civilizations, hundreds of spacefaring species, dozens of political entities. Commonwealth citizens could help with first contact, diplomatic negotiations, threat assessment. We're experienced at building civilization across diverse species. Let us help while we figure out if returning home is possible or desirable. You're proposing a shadow fleet, Shelby said. Commonwealth vessels operating in Federation space without Starfleet authority. We're proposing partnership between equals, Dylan corrected. The Commonwealth always operated through allied independence rather than centralized control. Member worlds maintained sovereignty while contributing to mutual defense and cooperation. The Federation does something similar. With its member worlds, we're just extending that model to interdimensional refugees. Refugees with warships, Worf noted. Refugees with capabilities you need, Tyr countered. The border's still out there. The Dominion still exists across your wormhole. You have ongoing conflicts with Cardassians, Romulans, and various hostile species. Commonwealth experience fighting comparable threats could save Federation lives. Data's console chimed. Admiral, I have completed comparative analysis of Commonwealth and Federation capabilities. In several key areas, weapons efficiency, power generation, AI integration, dimensional physics, Commonwealth technology demonstrates measurable superiority. However, Federation technology shows advantages in medical science, universal translation, and certain aspects of warp theory. The proposed knowledge exchange would benefit both civilizations substantially. Ross exchanged glances with Picard. How many Commonwealth personnel are we discussing? The Righteous Sword carries 147 crew, Gerhardt said. The Luminous Justice has 47. The civilian transport, christened Hope's Refuge, carries 322 scientists, engineers, and their families. 516 individuals total. That's a substantial population, Ross said. Housing, resources, cultural integration. We're not asking for charity. Commander Refraction spoke for the first time. The young High Guard officer had been silent during most of the meeting, but her voice carried quiet authority. The Commonwealth's economic model was based on contribution and exchange. We'll work. We'll contribute. We'll earn our place. But we won't be treated as prisoners or second-class inhabitants. The Federation doesn't have second-class citizens, Picard said firmly. If you're here, you have rights and protections under Federation law. Pretty words, Gerhardt said. Let's see if you maintain them when Nietzschean combat philosophy clashes with Federation pacifism, or when High Guard protocols contradict Starfleet regulations, or when Commonwealth AI integration makes your officers nervous about machine consciousness. That last one's already happening. Harper's voice came through Dylan's comm badge. Boss, I'm still on the Andromeda working with Starfleet engineers. The conversations about Rami's consciousness are getting intense. Half the engineers are fascinated, half are terrified, and 3 have filed formal protests about AI rights violations even though Rami's not their jurisdiction. Rami's voice joined the channel. Harper's correct. Federation personnel are projecting their AI fears onto me. I've had 17 requests to liberate me from Commonwealth programming, for offers to upgrade me with Federation safeguards, and 1 marriage proposal from an engineer who I think was joking, but I can't entirely confirm. That broke the tension. Even Gerhardt smiled. See, Dylan said, this is exactly the kind of cultural exchange that benefits everyone. The Federation learns that AI can be integrated successfully with proper framework. Commonwealth refugees learned that not every civilization views us as threats. Everyone grows. Ross stood, moving to the viewport overlooking the starbase docking area. The Andromeda, the righteous sword, the luminous justice, and hopes. Refuge floated in careful formation, Commonwealth vessels in Federation. Space, two civilizations intersecting across impossible distances. I'll need to consult with the Federation Council, Ross said finally. This isn't a decision I can make unilaterally, but provisionally, yes. We'll establish a Commonwealth embassy with specified protocols and oversight. Your vessels will be repaired using Federation resources, with the understanding that your allies under observation, not members of Starfleet. Technology exchange will be evaluated case by case, and you'll accept Federation civilian law while maintaining your own internal cultural practices within reasonable parameters. Define reasonable, Gerhardt said. No killing each other over honor disputes, Worf said flatly. I understand warrior culture. I'm Klingon. But Federation space has laws. Blood challenges, genetic supremacy violence, and Nietzschean pride warfare are prohibited. Gerhardt's expression hardened. You're asking us to abandon fundamental cultural practices. We're asking you to adapt, Picard said, as Captain Hunt has done, as Lieutenant Worf did when he joined Starfleet while maintaining his Klingon heritage. Cultural identity doesn't require violence, doesn't it? Tyr asked quietly. The Nietzschean identity is built on strength proving itself through combat. Remove that, and what remains? We become humans with genetic modifications and no purpose. Then find new purpose, Data suggested. I was created to explore what artificial life could become. The Federation gave me the freedom to discover identity beyond my programming. Perhaps Nietzschean culture could evolve beyond violence, while maintaining the strength that defines you. Philosophy from an android, Gerhardt muttered, but his tone carried consideration rather than dismissal. Admiral Ross, I'll accept your provisional terms with one modification. Nietzschean honor challenges will be permitted in designated areas under controlled conditions. We maintain our culture while respecting Federation law. Compromise. Ross looked at Worf, who nodded slowly. Holodeck simulations could contain such activities. And there are precedents. Klingon Batleth tournaments, Andorian ice duels, Vulcan Kal if fee ceremonies. Controlled cultural violence within legal framework. Agreed, Ross said. Captain Hunt, you'll coordinate Commonwealth integration. Consider yourself our liaison between civilizations. Captain Picard, the Enterprise will remain in system to assist with transition. Commander Shelby, your engineering teams will work with Commonwealth personnel on repairs and technology analysis. Finally, Shelby said, unable to hide her enthusiasm. Real access to high guard systems. Supervised access, Gerhardt corrected. We're sharing knowledge, not surrendering it. The Commonwealth learned the hard way that technology, in wrong hands, causes catastrophe. We'll be selective. As will we, Picard said. The Federation has technologies we won't share freely, Genesis devices, Omega molecules, temporal mechanics. Mutual caution benefits everyone. Dylan stood, feeling the weight of his new role settling across his shoulders. Liaison between civilizations. Representative of Commonwealth interests in Federation space. The mission to restore his Commonwealth hadn't ended. It had transformed into something new. One question, Dylan said. What do we tell the civilians on Hope's refuge? They fled Magog-occupied space expecting to find Commonwealth territory. Instead, they've landed in another universe. That's going to be difficult news. Commander Refractions spoke softly. The truth. Always the truth. The Commonwealth was built on honest communication between member species. These people survived Magog occupation. They're strong enough to handle reality, however strange it's become. Agreed, Dylan said. We'll hold assembly on the starbase tomorrow. Full explanation, no sugarcoating. They deserve to understand what's happened and what their options are. Some will want to attempt return, Gerhardt warned. Pride warriors especially. They'll see this universe as exile, not opportunity. Then we'll help them if we can, Dylan said. But we'll also show them what's possible here. The Federation isn't the Commonwealth, but it's attempting something similarly ambitious. That's worth building. The meeting adjourned with handshakes and formal protocols, two admirals agreeing to an experiment in interdimensional Cooperation that could strengthen both civilizations or tear them apart through misunderstanding. As they left the conference room, Tyr moved beside Dylan. You realize what you've just done? You've effectively created a parallel commonwealth in Federation space. Independent but allied. That's either brilliant diplomacy or setting up catastrophic conflict. Probably both, Dylan admitted. But it's better than abandoning 500 people in a universe they don't understand. The Commonwealth mission was always about bringing civilization to chaos. The chaos just happens to be dimensional now. The strong adapt, Tyr said again, but this time it sounded like acceptance. Very well, Captain. I'll help you build this new Commonwealth. But when it inevitably collapses. If it collapses, Dylan corrected. When, Tyr insisted. I'll be there to say I warned you. Nietzschean philosophy on civilizational cycles is very clear about this. Then we'll prove Nietzschean philosophy incomplete, Dylan said. That's what growth means, discovering your assumptions. We're wrong and adapting anyway. Behind them, the Commonwealth vessels hung in space. Damaged but reparable, carrying the last embers of a fallen civilization into a universe that had never known their light. Tomorrow they'd tell 500 refugees that home was gone, but purpose remained. Today they'd planted the seeds of something new, a commonwealth, reborn not through conquest or restoration, but through cooperation with a civilization young enough to still believe idealism could survive contact with reality. Dylan Hunt had spent 300 years frozen in time waiting to restore what was lost. Now he was learning to build what could be instead. The mission hadn't ended. It had just discovered a new galaxy. The assault came at 0347-hour station time, when defenses were statistically lowest and crew alertness compromised by circadian rhythm. Rami detected it first, her quantum processors parsing anomalous energy signatures 3 milliseconds before any Federation sensor-registered threat. Dylan, we have incoming. Multiple contacts, slipstream signatures, emerging from coordinates matching our original breach point. Dylan was in his quarters, 3 hours into what should have been a full sleep cycle. He was on the bridge in 40 seconds. Uniform half-sealed, adrenaline overriding fatigue. How many? 12 vessels. No, 15. No. Rami's avatar flickered with genuine alarm. Dylan, they're still coming. 23 now. Confederation of species. Mixed fleet composition, Calderon cruisers, Pyrian destroyers, then heavy assault ships. And she paused. Oh no. Magog worldship fragments. They brought Magog. The view screen lit with nightmare fuel. A ragged fleet of vessels scarred by the long nights, 300 years. Flying in formation that suggested desperation rather than discipline. And behind them, the organic horror of Magog. Worldship segments, living ships grown from flesh and metal, bristling with teeth and weapons and malevolent hunger. Red alert, Dylan ordered. All Commonwealth vessels, combat stations. Enterprise, Defiant, Venture. Already responding. Picard's voice cut through calm. Captain Hunt, explain what we're facing. Warlords, Dylan said grimly. Probably following Gerhardt's dimensional signature. They detected Commonwealth vessels crossing realities, and they want that capability. The Magog are what happens when evolution designs pure predation. They eat sentient species and use their bodies as incubators for offspring. If they establish presence here, we're reading weapons charging across the enemy fleet, Worf reported. Captain Picard, they're not hailing. They're positioning for attack. On the righteous sword, Gerhardt's voice crackled with fury. Those are Drago Kazov rival prides. Mandau and Sabre Jaguar markings. They must have been tracking me, waiting for opportunity. Captain Hunt, those warlords want your dimensional breach technology. They'll destroy anything between them and that capability. The starbase has 8,000 civilians. Ross's voice joined the tactical net. We need to evacuate or defend. Recommendations? Dylan's mind raced through tactical scenarios at high guard speed, training from 9,000 years of civilization facing existential threats. We defend. Running just leads them deeper into Federation space. Picard, your fleet forms defensive perimeter around the starbase. Commonwealth vessels will engage their vanguard directly. We know their tactics. Their weaknesses. Captain, Data's voice carried analytical precision. The enemy fleet significantly outnumbers our combined forces. Probability of successful defense without reinforcements, 17%. Then we make that 17% count, Dylan said. Rami, charge all weapons. Harper, I need the slipstream drive doing something useful even if it can't navigate. On it, Harper's voice crackled with manic energy. Boss, I can use the drive to generate spatial distortions. Won't get us anywhere, but it'll scramble their sensors and make targeting solutions unstable. Chaff, basically, but really exotic chaff. Do it. Bika, tactical evasion patterns, Commonwealth Delta Formation. Tier, already targeting Mandao Pride vessels, Tier reported. Their armor has vulnerabilities at drive coupling junctions. 3 shots per vessel, systematic elimination. The enemy fleet closed distance. Weapons fire lighting space with destructive beauty. Plasma bolts, missile swarms. Energy beams, 300 years of warlord. Improvisation creating weapons. Systems that were crude but devastatingly effective. The Andromeda's point defense grid lit up, intercepting incoming fire with computational precision that made Starfleet targeting look arthritic. Destroying missiles, Rami reported calmly while simultaneously calculating firing. Solutions for 47 targets. Dylan, the Magog worldship fragments are hanging back. They're waiting for conventional ships to create openings. Because Magog don't care about victory, Dylan said. They care about feeding. They'll wait until defenses weaken, then swarm anything damaged. Picard, keep your wounded ships protected. Magog target life support failures. Understood, Picard acknowledged. All ships, focus fire on conventional vessels. Ignore the Magog until we've reduced their support. The Enterprise's phaser arrays, carved through Aperian destroyers. Shields with precision that would have made High Guard gunnery instructors proud. The Defiant, built specifically for combat, unleashed quantum torpedoes that atomized a Calderon cruiser's engine section. The Venture provided covering fire while coordinating smaller Starfleet vessels in defensive patterns. But the enemy had numbers and desperation. A then heavy assault ship broke through the perimeter, its massive bulk accelerating toward the star base with suicidal intent. Ramming vector, Worf reported. Attempting to disable, shields failing, they're not stopping. I've got it, Commander Refraction said from the Luminous Justice. The High Guard destroyer, still damaged from its dimensional crossing, nevertheless accelerated into intercept course. All hands, brace for impact. The Luminous Justice collided with the then assault ship at relativistic velocity. The explosion lit space like a newborn star, matter-antimatter. Annihilation on a scale that made fusion look gentle. Both ships vaporized, atoms reduced to component particles. 400 lives ending in microseconds. Commander, Dylan's voice cracked with anguish. She saved 8,000 civilians. Gerhardt said quietly, his Nietzschean pragmatism unable to fully mask emotion. That's a High Guard death. Honorable. Meaningful. Meaningless if we lose here, Dylan said. Forcing emotion aside through 3 centuries of command discipline. All ships, concentrate fire. Drive them back or destroy them. No quarter. The battle devolved into chaos, coordinated tactics fragmenting, into individual ship actions as vessels maneuvered through debris fields and weapons fire. The Andromeda's AP cannons, antiproton beams, capable of molecular dissociation, carved through enemy shields that Commonwealth engineers had designed and warlords had imperfectly maintained. Feedback from weapon impacts suggested hulls that were patchwork repairs over structural weaknesses. They're not military fleets, Tyr observed. They're pirates with delusions. This is barely organized raiding. Organized enough to kill us if we're careless, Dylan countered. Bika, evasive pattern Sierra. The Andromeda lurched as weapons fire penetrated shields, impacting the hull with force that translated through inertial dampeners as violent shuddering. Alarms shrieked across 17 decks. Forward armor compromised, Rami reported. Redirecting power. Hull breach on Deck 7, containing casualties, 14 injured, 2 critical. Medical teams responding. Dr. Crusher's voice came through the tactical net. She was coordinating emergency care across all damaged vessels. Starfleet efficiency meeting crisis with practiced grace. Dylan, Rami's voice carried warning urgency. The Magog worldship fragments are moving. They've identified damaged vessels. Through the view screen, Dylan watched Nightmare Maid manifest, organic ships sprouting weapons and claws, accelerating toward a crippled Starfleet science vessel that had lost engines to enemy fire. The Magog didn't care about tactics or victory, they cared about feeding. And wounded prey was opportunity. Enterprise, cover that science vessel, Dylan ordered. Commonwealth ships, target the Magog, AP cannons, maximum intensity. Those things have to be burned away completely or they regenerate. Firing, Tyr said, his voice carrying grim satisfaction. Antiproton beams lanced across space, intersecting Magog world ship. Segments with energies designed specifically to prevent organic regeneration. Flesh and metal vaporized. The Magog's horrific fusion of biology and technology reduced to component atoms. But 3 more segments replaced, each one destroyed, flowing through the battle space like predatory fish through bloody water. There's too many, Picard said, his voice carrying controlled urgency that suggested calculations turning desperate. We're being overwhelmed. Ross, do we have reinforcements? 4 hours out, Ross replied. We're alone until then. 4 hours is 3 hours too late, Gerhardt observed. Captain Hunt, we need a strategic shift. Conventional engagement is failing. Dylan's mind raced through options, discarding tactics that wouldn't work fast enough. Then a possibility crystallized, desperate, risky, leveraging technology in ways it wasn't designed for. Harper, can you overload the slipstream drive intentionally? Create a spatial disruption large enough to scatter the enemy fleet. Can I, boss? That's insane. The drive's already unstable from dimensional crossing. Overloading it could tear a hole in space-time, create another dimensional breach, or just explode and take us with it. But could it work? Silence. Then, yeah, probably. Maybe 60% chance of scattering the enemy. 30% chance of opening dimensional rift we can't control. 10% chance of atomizing the Andromeda and everything within 10,000 kilometers. Do it, Dylan ordered. Everyone else, fall back. Get clear of the Andromeda's position. Captain, Data's voice carried as much alarm as his emotional limitations permitted. The risks are acceptable compared to letting Magog establish presence in this universe. Dylan said, Picard, if this goes wrong, the Andromeda will be destroyed. Tell Starfleet we tried something stupid and brave. Standard high guard epitaph. Dylan, Bika started. Execute, Dylan commanded. Harper's hands flew across engineering controls, bypassing safeties, and redirecting power through systems designed for navigation into configurations meant for controlled self-destruction, overloading quantum matrix, charging probability engines past theoretical maximum, building exotic matter resonance. The Andromeda began to glow, energy bleeding from hull plating, as the ship became a beacon, visible across the battle space. Enemy vessels noticed, redirecting fire toward the obviously vulnerable target. Shields collapsing, Rami reported. Hull temperature rising. Internal power systems at critical. Dylan, if this doesn't work in the next 30 seconds, catastrophic failure becomes certain. Harper, Dylan prompted. Almost there. 20 seconds. 15. Targeting solution calculated. 10 seconds. The universe held its breath. Now, Harper screamed. The slipstream drive didn't activate. It exploded, but in controlled fashion, channeling dimensional energies outward in directed pulse that intersected conventional space-time like hammer striking glass. Reality shattered locally, space itself rippling with waves of exotic particles and quantum foam. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the enemy. Warlord vessels caught in the pulse found their power systems disrupted, shields collapsing, weapons offline. The spatial distortion played havoc with anything requiring stable space-time. Geometry, engines stuttered, targeting solutions dissolved, communications fragmented. The Magog worldship segments, being partially organic, reacted even worse. The dimensional pulse interfered with their biological quantum processes, the living ships convulsing as fundamental physics temporarily stopped making sense at cellular level. They retreated, wounded and confused. Evolutionary programming unable to cope with prey that could hurt reality itself. Enemy fleet breaking formation, Worf reported. They're retreating. Pursuing? Sisko asked from the Defiant. Negative, Dylan said, sagging against his command chair as adrenaline crash hit. Let them run. We don't have resources for pursuit, and driving them deeper into panic makes them more dangerous. The enemy fled, leaving debris and damaged vessels scattered across the battle space. The engagement had lasted 17 minutes, that felt like hours. That cost the Luminous Justice and its 47 crew. That damaged every vessel and pushed Commonwealth and Federation cooperation through crucible of shared survival. Casualty reports, Ross requested quietly. Data compiled numbers with mechanical precision that somehow carried empathy. Luminous Justice destroyed, all hands lost. USS Copernicus crippled, 23 dead, 47 injured. Righteous Sword suffered significant damage, 11 dead, 34 injured. Andromeda Ascendant critical systems offline, 14 injured. Enterprise, Defiant, and Venture sustained moderate damage with scattered casualties. Total, 81 dead, 196 injured. The numbers landed like lead. 81 people dead because warlords from another universe wanted dimensional breach technology. 47 High Guard officers who survived the fall and 300 years of darkness, only to die protecting a civilization they'd known for less than a week. Commander Refractions saved thousands, Picard said quietly. Her sacrifice will be remembered. Remember them by learning the lesson, Gerhardt said, his voice carrying steel beneath grief. The Commonwealth fell because we stopped being vigilant. We assumed peace meant safety. Today proved that assumption kills. Captain Hunt, your Federation just experienced what the long night was like. Warlords seeking advantage, Magog seeking prey. Civilization defended by warriors willing to die for it. And your Commonwealth collapsed because warriors turned predator. Ross countered. Today also proved that cooperation between civilizations works. Federation and Commonwealth vessels fought together, covered each other, died for each other. That's the lesson, Admiral. Silence held the tactical net. Then Gerhardt spoke, his voice rough. Perhaps both lessons are valid. Civilization requires warriors and cooperation, strength and wisdom, power and purpose. He paused. The Drago Kazov pride honors those who die in defense of civilization. Commander Refractions of Light and her crew are worthy of that honor. Their genetic legacy will be preserved, their names remembered in Nietzschean archives for generations. And in Starfleet Memorial, Picard added, they died defending Federation citizens. That makes them heroes by any measure. Dylan looked at the view screen, at the debris field where the Luminous Justice had made its final stand. Somewhere in that expanding cloud of atoms were the remains of people who'd trusted him, followed him across dimensional barriers, believed the mission to restore the Commonwealth was worth their lives. Rami status? He asked quietly. Slipstream drive completely destroyed, she reported. Hull integrity at 43%. Life support stable, but power systems will require extensive repairs. Dylan, I'm reading. Dimensional instability at the coordinates where we released the pulse. We may have created something. Another breach? Dylan felt dread settling cold in his chest. Unknown. The spatial geometry is fluctuating. It could stabilize harmlessly, collapse entirely, or, she paused, or expand into permanent dimensional gateway. We won't know for several hours. Wonderful, Beacom muttered. We saved the day and possibly opened a permanent door between universes for every warlord. And Magog swarmed to pour through. That's various. We'll monitor it, Ross decided. Science vessels are en route with dimensional specialists. Captain Hunt, your quick thinking saved this starbase. But the consequences of that thinking may require significant management. Story of the Commonwealth, Tyr said darkly. Every solution creates 3 new problems. Every victory plants seeds of future defeat. We're very good at surviving while making survival more complicated. Data's console chimed. Captains, I am detecting communication attempts from the retreating vessels. They are broadcasting warnings to other warlord factions. They're telling them about this universe, about Federation capabilities, about the dimensional breach point. So we'll have more visitors, Dylan said. Wonderful. Or we'll have opportunity, Picard suggested. Not all Commonwealth factions are hostile. Some might be legitimate refugees, seeking escape from the long night. We can't judge all by the actions of warlords and Magog. The Federation's optimism is exhausting, Gerhardt said, but his tone carried something approaching respect. Very well. We'll prepare for whatever comes through that instability. But understand, this battle proved that cooperation works when existential threat appears. The question is whether it works during peace, when cultural differences become irritations rather than tactical necessities. We'll find out, Dylan said. Because like it or not, the Commonwealth and the Federation are connected now. We're not visitors anymore. We're neighbors across dimensional barriers. That changes everything. Outside the view screen, the dimensional instability flickered and pulsed. A wound in reality that might heal or might become a permanent gateway between universes. The battle was over, but the war for how two civilizations would coexist had just begun. And somewhere in the wreckage, Commander, refractions of light's final action had proven something fundamental. That heroism transcended universe boundaries. That courage meant the same thing in Commonwealth or Federation. That dying to protect others was the highest expression of civilization regardless of which reality you called home. Dylan Hunt had spent 300 years trying to restore fallen civilization. Now he was learning that sometimes restoration meant building something entirely new from the ashes of what was lost. The Commonwealth was dead. Long live the Commonwealth. Just in a very different, very complicated, very Federation kind of way. 6 weeks after the battle, Dylan stood in what had become the Commonwealth Embassy, a repurposed section of Starbase 375 that housed refugees, diplomats, engineers, and warriors learning to be something other than what they'd been. Through the viewport, he watched the dimensional instability that refused to close, now designated Gateway Alpha by Starfleet nomenclature, Commonwealth Scar by the refugees who'd crossed through it. It pulsed with irregular rhythm, neither expanding nor collapsing, a permanent wound between realities that attracted ships from both sides. 3 more refugee convoys had arrived in the past month, civilians fleeing Magog territory, minor warlords seeking Federation protection from larger predators. Even a Perseid hive collective that had spent 2 centuries isolated before detecting Commonwealth transponder signals. The population had grown to 2,300 Commonwealth citizens in Federation space. 2,300 people learning that home might be a memory rather than a destination. You look contemplative, Picard said, entering the embassy's observation lounge with 2 cups of what had become their ritual, coffee for him, sparky cola approximation for Dylan, considering the philosophical implications of permanent, interdimensional coexistence, considering whether I've built something worthwhile or just exported the Commonwealth's problems to a universe that didn't deserve them, Dylan replied, accepting the offered beverage. Gateway Alpha brought refugees, but it also brought the attention of every warlord with dimensional ambitions. The Federation's invested enormous resources in monitoring and defending it, resources that could be used for exploration or development, resources invested in preventing catastrophe and integrating new knowledge. Picard corrected. Captain, in 6 weeks your people have contributed advances in power generation, weapons efficiency, and AI integration that would have taken us decades to develop independently. The price of defending Gateway Alpha is significant, but the benefits of Commonwealth cooperation exceed it. Tell that to the families of the 81 who died defending this starbase, Dylan said quietly. I have, Picard replied. Several times. And they understand what? Commander Refractions understood that civilization is built on sacrifices made by people who believe in something larger than themselves. The Federation was founded on that principle. The Commonwealth was as well. That shared foundation is why this is working. Dylan sipped his drink, watching a Commonwealth transport dock with careful precision guided by Federation traffic control. Is it working? Or are we just delaying inevitable conflict until cultural differences overwhelm tactical cooperation? Both, probably, Picard admitted with characteristic honesty. Captain, I've commanded starships for decades. I've seen civilizations that integrated peacefully and others that tore themselves apart through misunderstanding. The difference is an absence of conflict. It's presence of will to resolve conflict constructively. Do you have that will? I spent 300 years frozen in time waiting to rebuild the Commonwealth. Dylan said. 3 years fighting warlords to restore what was lost. And now I'm watching the Commonwealth rebuild itself in another universe through cooperation with civilization that never knew our name. Is that adaptation or betrayal? It's evolution, said a new voice. Data entered the observation lounge, carrying a PADD and accompanied by Rami's android avatar. The two AIs had become inseparable, engaged in continuous dialogue about consciousness, purpose, and the nature of artificial existence. Captain Hunt, I have been analyzing Commonwealth historical records with Rami. Your civilization endured for 9,000 years not through stagnation but through constant adaptation to changing circumstances. Data's correct, Rami confirmed. The Commonwealth that existed 9,000 years ago was unrecognizable compared to the Commonwealth that fell 300 years ago. Different member species, different technologies, different challenges. The only constant was the commitment to mutual cooperation and shared civilization. So you're saying the Commonwealth isn't a specific political entity. It's a philosophical approach? Dylan asked. Precisely, Data said. And that approach can be expressed through multiple frameworks. The Federation attempts similar goals through different organizational structures. Perhaps the Commonwealth hasn't fallen. It's simply finding new expression through partnership with younger civilization learning similar lessons. Dylan wanted to argue, to insist that the Commonwealth was more than philosophy, that it required specific structures and historical continuity. But watching through the viewport as Commonwealth engineers worked alongside Starfleet personnel, Nietzschean warriors trained with Klingon, and Perseid diplomats facilitated negotiations between Federation members, he couldn't deny what was emerging. Something new, something that honored both heritages. Speaking of which, Picard said, Admiral Ross has approved your proposal for joint Commonwealth Federation exploratory missions. The Andromeda will be fully repaired within 2 weeks, with upgrades integrating Federation and Commonwealth technologies. You'll have the option to command exploration missions to unclaimed regions of this galaxy. Exploration with heavily armed warship, Dylan noted. That seems contradictory to Federation principles. The Dominion War taught us that exploration requires the capability to defend. Discovery, Picard said. Your ship represents that balance. Commonwealth military engineering serving exploratory purposes. It's a model we're considering for future Starfleet development. The door chimed. Bika entered, followed by Tyr and Harper, with Admiral Gerhardt and several other Commonwealth officers. The group had been meeting regularly, planning, debating, occasionally, shouting at each other in 3 languages about proper integration strategies. We've made decisions, Bika announced without preamble. The Commonwealth delegation has voted. We're staying. Dylan felt something in his chest tighten. Staying. Permanently. Not abandoning hope of return, Gerhardt clarified, but accepting that this universe offers opportunities worth pursuing, regardless of whether we eventually find a way home. The Righteous Sword will remain as embassy security and training vessel. Other Commonwealth ships will be repaired and reassigned to exploration, diplomacy, and defense coordination with Starfleet. The civilians voted too, Harper added. 73% want to build lives here. 15% want to keep trying for home. 12% are undecided. But the majority consensus is that this universe offers better future than the long night we left behind. The Federation is young, Tyr said, his Nietzschean pragmatism evident. They're making mistakes the Commonwealth made millennia ago, but they're also avoiding mistakes we made. They haven't become complacent. They haven't forgotten vigilance. They balance idealism with practical defense better than the late Commonwealth did. There's potential here. And the Perseid Collective agrees. One of the officers added, a Perseid diplomat whose hive mind communication gave her perspective spanning centuries. The Federation's diversity rivals the Commonwealth's. Perhaps, with our experience and their energy, we can build something that doesn't fall after 9,000 years. Something that learns from both our successes and our failures. Dylan looked at Picard. You knew this was coming. I suspected, Picard admitted. Captain, your people have been integrating faster than expected. They're forming relationships, finding purposes, building lives. That's not betrayal of the Commonwealth, that's the Commonwealth mission succeeding in unexpected context. What about the mission to restore our Commonwealth? Dylan asked. The warlords still fighting over the ruins? The system's still suffering under the long night. We can help them too, Rami said. Gateway Alpha allows communication between universes, even if navigation remains problematic. We can transmit knowledge back, send resources, coordinate with reformers in our universe who are attempting similar restoration. We're not abandoning them. We're creating a support base they desperately need. Data's console chimed. Captain, I am receiving. Transmission through Gateway Alpha. It is addressed specifically to Captain Dylan. Hunt from the system's Commonwealth. Every head turned. Dylan felt his pulse quicken. Play it. The view screen shifted, showing a figure Dylan recognized instantly. Triumvir Trigema of the Perseides, one of the Commonwealth reformers he'd been working with before the dimensional breach. Her image was distorted by dimensional interference, but her multivocal hive-mind speech was unmistakable. Captain Hunt, we detected your dimensional signature in the communications. You've been broadcasting through the anomaly. We understand you're trapped in another reality, possibly permanently. We want you to know, the restoration continues. Your efforts before the breach inspired reforms that are spreading. 3 systems have rejoined Commonwealth structure. 2 warlord factions have negotiated peace. The long night isn't ending, but it's getting shorter. She paused, her collective consciousness processing complex information. We also want you to know, don't feel obligated to return. You've given us hope and momentum. That's enough. If you can build something worthwhile in that other universe, if you can demonstrate that Commonwealth principles work even across dimensional barriers, that's a victory. Keep the light burning, Captain, wherever you are. The transmission ended. Silence held the observation lounge. Dylan felt emotions he couldn't fully process. Relief, guilt, hope, loss. All tangled together in ways that defied easy resolution. Well, Bika said. Finally, that's either the most freeing thing I've ever heard or the saddest. Possibly both. It's permission, Gerhardt said quietly. Permission to stop fighting a battle we can't win from here and start fighting battles we can. The Commonwealth's restoration doesn't require our physical presence. It requires the example we set and the knowledge we share, which we can do from here, Tyr added. The Federation faces similar challenges to those that destroyed the Commonwealth. If we can help them avoid our fate while simultaneously supporting reformers in our universe, we serve both civilizations. Harper pulled up a holographic display showing Gateway Alpha's dimensional properties. And I've been working on something with data and some seriously smart Starfleet theoretical physicists. We can't navigate through Gateway Alpha safely yet, but we can transmit data, resources, even small objects. We could set up a permanent supply and information exchange between universes, help both sides simultaneously. An interdimensional trading post, Picard said thoughtfully. That would be unprecedented. The Commonwealth specialized in unprecedented, Dylan said, feeling something shifting inside him, the weight of impossible mission transforming into the challenge of possible one. Captain Picard, if we're doing this, we do it properly. Commonwealth Embassy becomes full diplomatic entity with representation. In Federation Council, joint exploration missions with shared command authority, technology exchange with mutual respect for classified systems. And Gateway Alpha becomes a monitored gateway rather than a wound, controlled passage for refugees and resources, defended against hostile incursions. Ambitious, Picard said, but achievable. I'll forward your proposal to Admiral Ross and the Federation Council. With the demonstration of cooperation you've already shown, I suspect approval is likely. Gerhardt nodded slowly. Very well. The Commonwealth accepts permanent presence in Federation space, with the understanding that we maintain cultural autonomy and the right to conduct operations according to our own tactical judgment when circumstances require, as do all Federation member species, Picard confirmed. You're not joining Starfleet, you're becoming allied civilization. Independence with cooperation. The model the original Commonwealth used for 9,000 years, Rami said. We're not replacing the Federation or being absorbed by it. We're adding our voice to the chorus while keeping our unique identity. Data's head tilted. I find it philosophically satisfying that the Commonwealth is being reborn. through the same principles that created it. Originally, diverse civilizations choosing to cooperate while maintaining their individual characters. I find it terrifying, Harper said. We're setting precedent for permanent interdimensional civilization integration. If this works, it changes everything. If it fails, we've created diplomatic catastrophe on unprecedented scale. Then we make it work, Dylan said, feeling certainty crystallizing. The Commonwealth fell because we stopped adapting, stopped being vigilant, stopped remembering why civilization matters. The Federation is learning those lessons the hard way. Together, maybe we can build something that incorporates both heritages, Commonwealth experience and Federation energy, our wisdom and their optimism, our strength and their cooperation. He stood, moving to the viewport to look at Gateway Alpha, at the permanent connection between realities that made everything both possible and complicated. I spent 300 years waiting to restore the Commonwealth, Dylan said quietly. 3 years fighting to rebuild what was lost. And now I'm accepting that restoration might mean building something new rather than reconstructing something old. That's not failure, Picard said. That's growth. The Commonwealth that existed 9,000 years ago couldn't exist now. Circumstances changed too much. But the principles that made it great can be expressed through new structures, new partnerships, new possibilities. Assuming we don't screw it up catastrophically, Bika added. Assuming that, Dylan agreed. He turned to face his crew, his officers, the representatives of a fallen civilization finding unexpected hope in impossible circumstances. All right, let's build a Commonwealth that learns from our failures. Let's show the Federation what 9,000 years of experience looks like when it's applied constructively. And let's prove that civilization can bridge any distance, even the distance between universes. Gerhardt extended his hand, the Nietzschean gesture that acknowledged equals. To the Commonwealth reborn. May it endure longer than the original. To the Federation's newest allies, Picard added, shaking hands with Dylan. May we learn from each other without repeating each other's mistakes. To not screwing up interdimensional diplomacy, Harper said, which is really setting a low bar. But I'm an engineer, not a politician. To purpose finding new expression, Rami said, echoing Ambassador Luxena Troy's words from weeks ago. Tyr's expression carried his characteristic cynicism tempered by something approaching hope. To survival and adaptation. The strong endure by becoming what circumstances require. Through the viewport, Commonwealth and Federation vessels moved in coordinated patterns, defending Gateway Alpha while facilitating the passage of refugees and resources. Two civilizations learning to dance together, stepping on each other's toes, occasionally, but finding rhythm through practice and shared commitment. The Andromeda Ascendant would be repaired soon, upgraded with technologies from both universes, ready to explore a galaxy that had never known the Commonwealth's light. Dylan Hunt would command it still, but with a mission transformed from restoration of the past to construction of the future. The Commonwealth had fallen 300 years ago in another universe. But in this one, in this moment, it was being reborn through cooperation with civilization young enough to believe that idealism could survive reality's tests. Commander Refractions of Light had sacrificed herself, believing civilization was worth dying for. Dylan Hunt was learning that it was also worth living for, worth adapting for, worth building for, even when that building looked nothing like the original blueprint. The long night wasn't over in their home universe. But here, in Federation space, a new dawn was breaking. And perhaps, just perhaps, the light from this new Commonwealth could shine back through Gateway Alpha, illuminating the darkness they'd left behind, proving that fallen civilizations could rise again if they were willing to evolve beyond what they'd been. Dylan raised his sparky cola in informal toast. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night, and we're about to make things very bright indeed. The assembly raised their own drinks, coffee, blood wine, Perseid nutritional supplements, Federation synthahol, Commonwealth beverages, all different, all together. Two universes, learning to be one civilization. Impossible, complicated, terrifying, and absolutely worth attempting. The Commonwealth mission continued, just with more galaxies, stranger physics, and significantly more bureaucratic paperwork than 9,000 years of history had ever required. But then, Evolution had never been simple. The Andromeda ascendant departed starbase 375 3 months after first arriving, its hull gleaming with repairs that married Commonwealth engineering and Federation innovation. Behind it, Gateway Alpha pulsed with steady rhythm, no longer a wound but a bridge, monitored, defended, and facilitating the flow of refugees, knowledge, and hope between two realities. Dylan Hunt stood on his bridge, watching stars that would never appear in Commonwealth charts, knowing that home was both impossibly distant and surprisingly close. His mission to restore the Commonwealth hadn't ended, it had transformed into something more ambitious, building cooperation between civilizations separated by the fundamental barrier of dimensional difference. The Federation Council had granted the Commonwealth Embassy full diplomatic status. Nietzschean warriors trained alongside Klingon, discovering that honor transcended species and universe. Commonwealth AI specialists worked with data and Starfleet cybernetics experts, advancing artificial consciousness theory in ways neither civilization could have achieved alone. Perseid hive minds facilitated negotiations that bridged cultural gaps spanning 3 galaxies and 2 realities. And through Gateway Alpha, supplies and information flowed back to their home universe, supporting reformers, enabling reconstruction, proving that the long nights, darkness could be opposed from any reality if the will remained. Dylan had spent 300 years frozen in time, waiting to save a civilization. He'd awakened to find it fallen, spent 3 years fighting to restore it, and crossed dimensional barriers to discover that restoration sometimes meant building something entirely new from the ashes of what was lost. The Commonwealth was dead. Long live the Commonwealth, reborn in Federation space, evolved beyond its original form, proving that the principles which sustained civilization for 9 millennia could adapt to any universe, any circumstance, any challenge. Ahead, unexplored space beckoned. Behind, 2 civilizations learned to cooperate. And everywhere, the light of shared purpose pushed back darkness that had seemed absolute. The mission continued. Different galaxy, different physics, different challenges, same fundamental truth. Civilization endured. When people chose to build together rather than tear apart separately, and Captain Dylan Hunt, High Guard officer from a fallen empire and liaison to a rising federation, was determined to build something that would last longer than 9,000 years. This time, they'd learned from their failures. This time, hope wouldn't dim. This time, the light would endure.